99-cent rental.
This is 99 Cent Rental. I'm your host, Brian White, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Oh, hi. All right. Like most decent Americans, been a rough couple weeks. I think lived about 48 lives in a span of a week or two. And there was a small bit of consolation came this week when that sack of human garbage, Alex Jones, had his company usurped by The Onion. But then, like all good things, the rug was pulled out from under us when a judge put a hold on that sale because Alex Jones threw a big tantrum and nothing but conservative hacks on the courts now.
So this is easily the most the funniest possible outcome of that, because I'm a regular listener of the Knowledge Fight podcast, and so,
I thought you were going to say InfoWars, and I was going to be like, well, good episode. See ya.
No, and so I've been kind of keeping up with that, and there was this kind of anxiety that this, like, some company would come in, shady people, because like Alex Jones's history, he's always been sort of bailed out by sort of anonymous donors who just all of a sudden hurl money at him when he's in trouble. And so everybody was like, okay, somebody's obviously going to kind of come in like a shell company and just buy it up on Alex's behalf, and just everything's going to keep going. And that did happen. And that's kind of what's at the center of this whole, like, sort of, it's not really an injunction. Ben Collins, who's the guy who kind of headed up the whole thing, assured everybody that that Alex and InfoWars are making a much bigger deal out of this sort of stall that they're running, and that everything's actually on course and it's fine. Don't worry about it. So,
all right.
But
well, I don't care one way or another.
I think it's extremely funny. I think it's the best thing that possibly could have happened.
Yes.
But yeah, that very, very funny thing that definitely went down, because nobody's more deserving of having their entire brand and identity taken away from them than Alex Jones,
and having his face ripped off by wild creatures. Other than that, I am currently fighting off a migraine. So if I don't have my usual zip and zing, it's probably because of that.
You know what you need?
Cheer wine.
Cheer wine. You need some cheer wine in your life.
Yeah, I
just raise your spirits.
I did just have some hamachi. That was pretty good.
What's a hamachi?
Hamachi yellowtail.
Oh shit! Okay, so you're getting that high quality sushi.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It came from a place over at Assembly Row, which is basically the mall. So, I mean, I can't speak to the quality of it. It was good.
It's mall sushi.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, just
it's like fancy mall. Like the outdoor malls that are all the rage now with the kids.
Oh boy. Well,
yeah.
Good times. So it's hard to explain to someone who never had the experience what a trip to the video store was like back in the day. The shelves were choked with absolutely bizarre crap made on tiny budgets, completely divorced from any recognizable reality, and it was the best. We intend to talk about every one of them. But just before we get into it, a little housekeeping. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at Bring Me the Axe Pod. Dave's over there at That Queerwolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us a follow. We're fun. We're having a good time. We started doing the What to Watch double feature challenges again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good one this week. Groovy horror, I called it.
Mm-hmm. Well, pretty good.
Yeah. I'm also on TikTok.
Yeah.
Doing the Dougie.
Fucking doing Charleston, doing the robot, out there, doing the boogaloo. I shouldn't use them all.
You save them, man. We gotta conserve this because we're running out of dances.
Do people still do dances on TikTok?
I'm sure that they do.
I don't understand TikTok. I'm like a 70-year-old when it comes to this shit.
I don't like. I like, despite the fact that I actually like try to create content over there. I don't actually watch it because I can't fucking stand most of it.
No.
But yeah, I assume they're still dancing and stuff. I know that there's a lot of like really, really terrible like punk and metal music that's mostly costuming and makeup than music. It's weird. I don't know.
So it's like punk in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah, anyways, look, boy, we're just bringing a ray of sunshine.
I see.
Thing. Yeah, you definitely want to follow us. Look us up by name over there.
I just rant about shit that's not cool anymore. Hasn't been since the 90s.
And if you don't know, we have another show called Bring Me the Axe.
I do the same thing there, too.
Our latest episode covering the 1931 1932 pre-code horror, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, is out now. We'll be back next week with a look at Daughters of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
A little sexy lesbian vampire action.
Yep.
You can also contact us directly at 99centrentalpod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a cheesy movie that you love, would like to hear us give it the business. And if you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can look us up over there, patreon.com/bringmetheaxepod. There's a couple of tiers you can join there. Subscribers at the $5 a month tier can look forward to our bi-weekly X-Files rewatch pod, Do You Think I'm Spooky?
Yeah.
As well as my bi-weekly DJ show, Radio Free Haddonfield, and the weeks when Do You Think I'm Spooky is off. You can expect a surprising mixtape of everything from rock to disco to punk over there. And once again, that's patreon.com/bringmetheaxepod.
Give us your dollars.
Yeah, I'm working 2 jobs right now, people. I haven't had a day off in like 3 weeks. Patreon.com/bringmetheaxepod.
I just work the one job, but it occupies a lot of my time. Yeah, this I tell you, I don't know what people think of how people think that podcasts come to being, but it seems like a lot of people are just like, "Wait, you just turn the fucking microphone on, right?" And I bet a lot of people would be surprised to learn that no, it takes a little bit more than that.
I wrote like the very first post that I posted over there was a sort of like what you get for your money kind of thing, like just to sort of like what it is beyond like. You know, we'll give you some extra content and stuff, but like this is what you're actually paying for, and it is a surprising list of stuff. So yeah. Lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name and subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcast that way. And you'll be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor. Give the episode a like and leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. Yeah, because I just want to get all that out of the way right at the top of the show because holy crap, we've got a weird one to talk about tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to give you a taste of some weird shit. Here we go.
Boy, I can't believe this. This is actual live, huh?
Well, it's not going out yet, but it will.
Are you taping it then, or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. When can I see this? I'll go home and watch it and say, boy, wow. Hey, Mom, I got on the set today, you know.
What are you doing, Beaver?
What do I do? Well, I'm kind of the Beaver Rich Little. That's what I do. I do a lot of performing. See, Olivia Newton John, I sing like her.
Ladies and gentlemen, Olivia Newton John.
Wow! Are you filming this?
Yeah, all America's watching.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I've never been on the set before. I love hamming it up, you can tell. Ooh.
I got the face down, and then I'm kind of working on the voice. See? Hey, Clarissa, how about some of that?
Larry, why don't you do a deaf mute and shut up?
Jeez, that's a good one, deaf mute.
Everyone changes, be my friend. Haven't you got the time? Help me, I need you. Throw me down the line. Please don't keep me waiting. I can't hold on much longer. Please don't keep me waiting. I can't take this kind of thing.
Hey, if you thought that was confusing, buckle up.
Yeah. So, boy, it doesn't really make it clear. We're doing a movie called The Beaver Trilogy, which this is one of your picks.
It is. I love this movie. I've been very excited to talk about it. Been waiting for a while. It is very hard to find, as you can attest to.
Yeah, I had to order it directly from Trent Harris.
I saw this like, I don't know, probably 15 or so years ago, but like a little, not long after the movie, the trilogy itself came out and was in theaters, maybe a couple of years after. And it is such a fascinating thing to watch. And then to know more about it, it becomes even more fascinating. And I just want to, it's like one of those movies where I'm like, I need to talk about this with other people.
Yeah, okay. So, I've watched this movie 4 times this week. I usually watch a movie twice when we do this, and it's usually just to kind of get a sense of like, all right, what's this movie about, and then what am I gonna say, and then I actually do it for like notes where I write down like exactly what happens in it. This one, I was like that usual like 2 movie run just wasn't enough because I kept thinking about it and I kept like ruminating on it, thinking like, what the fuck is this movie? And like, why can't I stop thinking about it? Because that was the very key point of it, was it got in my head and all I wanted to fucking know about was all the shit that's not in the movie.
Yeah, there's a lot. We are going to do a shitload of speculating. I know quite a bit about the actual movie at this point, but like, I think when we first started talking about it, I was like, well, it could be the shortest thing we ever have, but I have like
that's
many pages of notes.
When I started this out, I was like, okay, because we earlier this year we tried to do this with a Kenneth Anger disc. We wanted.
In fairness, that movie was silent though.
Yeah, we wanted to do the Magic Lantern cycle. And when we watched it, we were like, I don't know if there's an episode in this. And so going into this one, I was like, oh man, I don't know. This is going to be a really, really short episode. But then after I watched it, I'm like, this could be a 2-parter for fuck's sake. Like, I've got a lot to talk about when it comes to Groovin' Gary and Trent Harris and his like obsession and like what this all means and what he's trying to sort of work out with it. Because I think this is an art film through and through, but it is the most unlikeliest of art films that I've ever seen.
Well, I think it's weird that it is an art film. It is absolutely an art film. It is very kind of avant-garde in its way. This movie makes sense to one person alone, and it is made. It is ostensibly made for one person, and it is made by that one person. And when he was done with it, he put it away.
It is this, and the thing that's really funny about Trent Harris these days is Trent Harris is the director of this movie, and we're going to break the whole thing down right now. I'm sure that this sounds very nebulous and weird as we're kind of working it out together, but this was a singular moment in Trent Harris's life that haunts him in such a way that if you try to engage him on the topic of this movie now, he will not talk about it.
Yeah, he is at best cagey.
Yeah. And throughout the years, as his like experience has evolved in his own head, and the way that he sort of has changed the character of Groovin' Gary in his head over the years, like his place in the proceedings, his sort of like feelings of guilt, maybe some responsibility, the way that he words a very particular event that happens that off screen. That I'm sort of saving.
I know what you're talking about, and I also found that a little bit, this odd phrasing.
Yes, yeah. So let's just talk about it. We're gonna do this a little differently this week too. Also, usually we kind of front load this with a lot of like history and like production stuff and like trivia, but the production history and the trivia is all really kind of woven into the story itself. So we're kind of gonna just jump into this, but not before some facts. All right. So, this movie was released in 2001. Year of our Lord.
Yeah. Not a great year.
Not a great year, but it was all shot in 1979, 1981, and 1984. But Harris has, until I think 2000, he never intended ever to release any of this.
Well, he tried. He did try to release it, but he would show each one to people, and they'd be like, "What is this?"
It wasn't until he put it together as a unified whole that it had a kind of that it became a kind of holistic experience. Because if you watch like the 1981 version, it's like removed from its context. It doesn't make much sense, and it's also not very good.
No.
And then the 1984 one is like a thesis project that he did for like film school. And so it has a much bigger sort of production, and it's much more grand and stuff.
Oh
But
no,
again,
he made that with a grant from
the AFI.
Yeah, and is it film school that he made it for? I thought he just made it because it was like he got $50,000 to make the third one.
Yeah, but it was a thesis for AFI. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about other movies that were released that year in 2000.
Oh no,
it's not good. Captain Corelli's Mandolin was released in 2001, which sounds like an SNL sketch parodying period romances of the time.
Yeah, starring David S. Pumpkins.
No, I would watch that. No, that's got Nicolas Cage, who's like obsessed with playing mandolin and like teaching his army unit in Italy to sing or something.
This movie sounds like garbage.
It sounds utterly fucking ridiculous. I vaguely remember when it was released. It sounds outrageous and stupid. Corky Romano also came out that year. The Chris Kattan movie.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, it's not just strap in. Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, which may as well be a Troy McClure movie. Came
now
out
that
year.
is the third Crocodile Dundee movie.
Third Crocodile Dundee movie.
Okay.
Yep. Cruel Intentions 2 came out, which features all of the same characters. It's a prequel, I think, and it features all of the same characters from the first one, but they're all different actors.
Yeah.
Yep. And then rounding it out, maybe John Carpenter's lowest moment with Ghosts of Mars.
Oh, that's a bad one. That is really tough.
Oh, yeah. 2001. Bad things happened that year, just all around. Kind of put everybody in a weird mood.
It's a real toilet of a year.
9/11 happened, and they're like, I guess we got to release the rest of these movies on our schedule.
Ugh.
Yep. So our cast and crew is made up. We got our director. Is a guy named Trent Harris.
Don't worry, you've never heard of him or seen anything he's ever made.
No. His career in film is incredibly hard to characterize, as this movie, an incredibly deep cult piece, is probably his best known work. We personally, us two, know him primarily for this utterly weird 1991 riff on Waiting for Godot, Ruben and Ed, which I feel like we rented that one a lot.
I don't know about a lot.
I don't remember anything except my cat can eat a whole watermelon scene.
Yeah, if that movie is notable for anything, it's probably because this was the character that Crispin Glover was most likely doing when he got kicked off of the David Letterman show for almost kicking David Letterman in the face.
Yeah.
It is a very, very strange and very uncomfortable clip that I urge you to all go watch.
Yeah. I did watch it in the run up to this, and it's way funnier than I remember.
Yeah, it is extremely awkward because you can tell that David Letterman is not having any of Crispin Glover's shit in that, and he is just not taking the bait.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah, because in that clip, he also brought that like collection of like weird diseased eye things that he's got, and he attempts to sort of show them off, but he never even gets close because Letterman walks off. Yep. So though things don't really work out for Harris in Hollywood, he turns a series of video blogs shot way before that was even a thing into a series of travel logs and documentaries about some of the most desperate places on Earth. His current work concerns a lot of charities and causes like clearing the metric shit ton of unexploded mines in Cambodia left by the Viet Cong and the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah, it's like he lives a real artist's life at this point. Like, he just does a bunch of sort of artsy shit.
Yeah.
And lives sort of a very small existence, but he is very committed to that existence.
Yeah. He seems really grouchy.
He definitely is a weirdo who, which is, I always find this a little bit weird. I mean, there's almost a John Carpenter-ness to him.
Yes.
Where he's like,
oh my God. Okay.
It didn't work out, so I'm bitter.
I got some notes about that. And because I think that eventually his kind of experience with Hollywood sort of it becomes a reflection of kind of Groove and Gary's attempts to become famous. And it's like a weird part. It's like another dimension of this story that I find really fascinating.
Yeah, because he definitely, there is a little bit of bitterness to a lot of that, especially if you read stuff from when this came out in late 90s, early 2000s. And it's like, dude, it didn't work out for you because you kind of refused to play their game.
That's it. Is his frustration seems to stem from the fact that he can't make a living as an artist. And it's like, well, no shit, dude. Nobody can.
Beyonce's doing pretty good at
it. So our cast includes Richard Groove and Gary Griffiths. As of the release of this movie, very little is known about Groove and Gary apart from what we get on screen, and I'll save that for the larger discussion. I personally believe that it's this vignette completely removed from any larger context that fuels Harris's own obsession with revisiting this one weird moment in his life. Because I'm certainly obsessed with Groove and Gary.
I will argue later that it has less to do with Gary than it does to do with Trent Harris.
Okay. We've also got Sean Penn, who up to this point had only done a couple of small roles on screen. This same year, he's going to blow up in Amy Heckerling's Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He worked on this right after he finished that movie. As the 80s goes on, he gains a reputation for dating Madonna and beating up paparazzi. Nowadays,
maybe you've heard of him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nowadays, he's a good actor. That's the thing. Like, he is definitely an actor of note. Nowadays, he insinuates himself into just about every liberal cause and has recently starred in a movie with Kid Rock about how liberals and conservatives need to learn to put their differences aside in the interest of national unity.
And I would say that movie probably hasn't aged very well in the last month.
Right. Rounding out our cast is Crispin Glover, one of my favorite actors and a professional weirdo who, unlike Sean Penn, had been around Hollywood showing up on TV and had already done a spot in Friday the 13th, the final chapter by this point.
Yeah, he is basically, everybody would know him as George McFly from Back to the Future, and that is precisely what he is doing in this movie.
Yeah, for sure. Because at the time that they shot this, he was doing this movie with Harris on his days off from Back to the Future.
Yeah, so he is doing George McFly. Sean Penn is doing Spicoli from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You're not getting, this is not like a stretch for anybody except maybe for Trent Harris.
Yeah. So he goes on to a string of incredibly weird, highly curated roles, which reflect his genuinely weird personality. A few years later, as we said, he nearly kicks David Letterman in the face on TV, dressed as the character that Trent Harris uses in this movie, Ruben and Ed.
But honestly, who among us doesn't want to kick David Letterman in the face?
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't miss.
Nope.
Oh, for some reason, I remember that scene of him actually kicking David Letterman.
No, but he comes pretty close, though.
Yeah. I don't know why I think of that. This is such a fucking... This is like truly, I think of all the movies we've done on 99 Cent Rental so far, this is probably the first truly cult movie. Because it is a small
I would
cult.
say it actually doesn't even fall into that category very well. It's just one of those movies that a certain number of people have seen, and of the people who have seen it, probably the majority of them would be like, oh shit, yeah, that movie is wild.
Yeah.
Like it affects you so much and you don't even know what to do with it.
True. Yeah, like as I said, I've been trying to figure this out and I go to bed thinking about Groove and Gary and like this fucking crazy movie.
Well, you know what it made me think of is there was maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, this is the guy that made Thin Blue Line.
Errol Morse.
Yeah, Errol Morse put out a book. I believe it's called Believing is Seeing. And it's all about, obviously the concept of photography is that like, a picture cannot be manipulated or altered. Like what you see in a photo, until very recently, obviously. But like what you see in a photograph is exactly what was happening. And his argument is that's not true at all, that this shit was manipulated all the time and sometimes things were arranged. So what you end up seeing is a very carefully crafted thing where the person who's making it is deciding what you see and what message you get. It's very much like that kind of the old core tenet of like communications theory of like,
Okay, yeah.
You, the receiver, are sort of like interpreting this, but someone is also very carefully crafting what they want you to see, or what their idea, like what their reality is, essentially, is what you're seeing. And that's what made this movie made me think of that book, because this is very much one person's version of reality that we will eventually get into is probably extremely skewed and turned out to be quite different than what was the truth.
Yeah, because it's a collision of two people, but only one person gets to tell the story.
This is the vaguest, most frustrating conversation to listen to.
I know. We should just say, fuck it, get into it.
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing, though, before we get in. This movie was so fucking far ahead of the curve that it's weird. I suppose it's just like sort of the human condition and the kind of the need to stand out and like kind of drive to be famous. But like this movie, shot in the, ostensibly throughout the 80s, really kind of predicts where like media is going after like 2000, because like all of a sudden we have this, it's reflective of sort of weird kind of arbitrary fame that sort of popped up after like 9/11 with like, where like Paris Hilton kind of became famous just because she was a rich kid.
Yeah, people want to be famous for nothing.
And then there was like a guy like Jeffree Star who got really, really famous just because he was like popular on MySpace.
Now you're gonna have to refresh my memory on that one.
Jesus Christ. He eventually kind of turns to shitty pop club music, but like he was just like probably the most followed person on MySpace back in the day. He's a very flamboyant personality, a lot of like kind of a draggy presentation without being drag,
It sounds vaguely familiar.
Fucking look him up.
No,
but also
I won't.
Don't. You only stand to lose. But also at the same time, you get this sort of like weird accidental fame for all the wrong reasons. And there are certain parts of like the Groove and Gary story that reminds me of, do you remember Star Wars Kid?
Yes.
So like that, like where he's just this dude like playing around who is essentially exposed by shitty fucking bully classmates, and it just ruins his fucking life.
Yeah, this movie is like if the people who exposed the Star Wars Kid had a conscience.
The people who did expose the Star Wars Kid did eventually gain a conscience and went out of their way to like make amends, but the dude just wasn't having it.
I think and also a good reference point too would be something like
Leave Britney Alone is the other one that sticks out to me.
Oh, I was thinking Anton Dodson, the Clown in Your Windows.
Yeah, that's a great
very
one.
much that. It's very much like in the moment you realize what you're watching, maybe you're laughing, and then a little bit later on it dawns on you like, oh, that's wicked racist.
Yeah. For if you've forgotten already, he's climbing in your windows, snatching your people up.
Yeah.
Hide your kids, hide your wife, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay, so let's stop
like
beating
that.
around the bush, because this is probably extremely frustrating to listen to. All right, so we're just going to jump into it, and we're going to fucking pick this shit apart like crazy. So we open on a harsh, naturally lit parking lot of KUTV Channel 2 in Salt Lake City, Utah.
We don't even really open. We just get dumped into a moment. This is like... what? Right? What's a media res? Is that the
media res? Yeah.
Yeah.
The cameraman scans the lot, briefly stopping on a young man who appears to be taking pictures of the news helicopter.
Yep. He is the most 70s person you'll ever see.
Oh God, yeah.
He has got on some bell bottoms that are whoo.
They remind me of Junko jeans.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
It's like if Shaggy came to life.
Yes. Yeah. His attention wanders, eventually coming back to and centering on the young man, who turns and realizes that he's being filmed. So we cut to, they talk a little bit. It's hard to make out what they're saying because there's no microphone out yet.
He is essentially telling him why he's there, what he came to do. This is Richard Griffiths is the guy. He tells him his name is Groove and Gary.
Right, but it takes a little while to get there, though. Like for a while, he's just this guy, and Harris seems. And I don't understand. I don't really see why he would really want to kind of press him and get to know who he is. He never asks his name or anything like that.
No. So what Trent Harris is doing is he's testing out a new camera, in it's a video camera, right? This is the first video
So
camera.
This is one of the first sort of like like a video camera they were using at KUTV to sort of like shoot news instead of old like film reels and shit.
Yeah, so he's out there sort of like fiddling around trying to figure out how it works. And so I would imagine, I've never heard him explain why he kept talking to him, but I would imagine he was just like, I'm trying to get enough tape here to see what it's like to talk to somebody on this thing and get a deal, like a representative interview or something like that. He's just trying to figure out what this camera is and how it works, and because he will have to go use it.
Trent, at the time, he was, I believe, he was teaching filmmaking classes in Salt Lake City, and at the same time, he was like earning a little bit more money on the side, basically holding a camera for KUTV.
Yeah,
and so this being a new piece of equipment that he was likely going to be using, it behooved him to sort of learn how to use it in the context of news where they were often just like interviewing people on the scene and shit like that. And so he just happens upon this guy who's just hanging around the parking lot taking pictures and stuff.
Which, can you imagine, what are the odds, given what happens, the outcome of all of this, what are the odds that these two specific people kind of collide? Like if they'd missed each other by a minute, none of this would have
happened. And Trent Harris's life would have gone in a much weird, like more conventional direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the cameraman hands the young man a microphone, and he immediately launches into an impression of John Wayne.
Yeah, my note says his John Wayne impression is not very good.
I would argue that none of his impressions are actually very good.
Yeah.
But I will say this. All of this is punctuated by nervous laughs. I love Gary's laugh. I love it. He
will spend to the point where you're watching him and you think initially, is he high or is he just extremely uncomfortable? And it's probably the latter. That he is just he's an awkward person in a very strange situation. I don't think he expected to be caught by a person from the studio in the thing, like in the parking lot. Now,
here's the thing. I think he did expect.
Well, that's why he went there. He specifically drove to that studio in order to try to get on TV. I don't think he expected to be found in the parking lot, though.
Yeah.
And so when it happened, he wasn't prepared. So he just comes off as like profoundly goofy, I guess is the best way to describe it.
He's excited. He's
excited. He's very, very awkward, and he laughs like it's punctuation. I mean, it's everything he does is followed by a weird, awkward laugh.
I love the laugh, though. The laugh is the thing. And the thing is I don't want to give the impression that Gary is like a gigantic weirdo. He is magnetic from the moment you see him.
Yeah, there's something, and that's so. Trent Harris had said as much because there's a great interview with him from This American Life, probably early 2000s ish.
It's about 2002. I used the Starley Kine interview.
And
It was a part of my research on this.
Starley Kine is a great interviewer, and because she eventually gets him to open up about this, but he says that because she was like, why did you keep filming him? And he was like, I don't know. There was something about him that really kind of grabbed me. Like he was very awkward because Trent Harris, as you can imagine, based on what we've already said about him, he had he was kind of a weird misfit kid growing up in the Midwest when he was younger, and he was like, there was just something about this guy that probably reminded him of himself a little bit, and so he was just kind of captivated by him. And he does have a weird kind of magnetic, or I would say it's more endearing than anything else.
Sure. Yeah, the thing is like, I get the feeling, because I myself am a bit of a weirdo magnet. Like, you go to any spot where there is a person who just desperately wants to just like talk to somebody and kind of like be themselves, even though like they could be like Groove and Gary, or they could be just some kind of like a local strange person, and everybody else will ignore them. I will actually like take the time to hear this person out and talk to them, because I find these sorts of people very, very interesting. I get the feeling that Harris is very similar as well. Like, he just wants to know about other people. And the more colorful and more strange they are, the more... And that could be a double-edged sword, because sometimes it puts you in a situation where you're just like, oh my God, get me the fuck out of here. What have I done? But sometimes you end up in a situation like this.
Well, now, listener, this will come as a surprise to you. I am the opposite of that, in that I have a mean face and not a very warm personality until you get to know me, and then I think I'm quite convivial. And I, having been in many situations with you, have been the secondhand victim of those people.
Yeah. I don't know. I get it. Like, this is a part of the story that I totally understand. Like, why Harris just kept talking to this guy, because he's, at the very least, he's interesting.
There's a reason why this movie resonates with everybody who has ever seen it, and it has something to do with that, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just what you see on the screen, because what you see on the screen doesn't really matter. It's the story, but it's not about that.
Yeah, it is the shit that is happening in the margins, the stuff that happens off screen, that, like, you want to, because what you end up getting is actually not much,
right,
but it's enough to really spark your imagination, and you suddenly start asking questions like, what the fuck was Gary doing in Salt Lake City? Because we're going to find out that he's from a little town also in Utah called Beaver, but Beaver's like 3 hours away from Salt Lake City.
It's pretty far.
And from all we can tell, he is just hanging around the parking lot of a television station, just like taking pictures. And like, I'm like, what did he do before he got there? What did he do after he leaves? Like, what was Gary fucking doing in Salt Lake City? And
this is why
find out.
Well, this is why I referenced the Errol Morris book, because the first film in this trilogy, which is the Beaver Kid, I think it's Beaver Kid, is that what it's called?
Beaver Kid, and then the next one's called Beaver Kid too.
It is ostensibly a documentary in that it's not a scripted moment. It's just him filming this thing. There's a little light creative flourish kind of in the middle, and then the rest of it, he's just pointing a camera at what is happening. But that's the whole point, is that he has arranged this in a particular way to convey something to you. But the first part is, for all intents and purposes, documentary. What happens after is not a documentary, but it's probably best to remind that is the first part of this, is that this is all real. What is happening is just what's unfolding in front of Trent Harris when he has the camera on.
Yeah. So get back to Gary. He does a couple of more impressions. He does Stallone from Rocky.
Yep. He says he can sing like Barry Manilow and Olivia Newton John.
But he won't, because he doesn't have his backup.
I assure you, he can sing like neither of those people.
My friends,
we will find that out later.
My friends, you're going to hear a lot about Olivia Newton John in this episode. Yeah. So the cameraman asks him what he does in Beaver, which is, like we said, small town, Utah Rockies. He tells him that he's the Beaver Rich Little. Mm-hmm. And if you're not familiar,
he says like anybody, like in your Beaver, you drag Maine at night and you go to school during the daytime. And my note just says, yikes.
Yeah. This is so potently 1970s too.
Because this is where he tells him his name is Groovin' Gary, and I still don't understand why he says that, because his name isn't even Gary.
No, that's his CB handle.
Oh, god damn, that is 70s.
Right? So we've got, and he doesn't reveal that until they go to his car, which is later. But we have,
that's right.
We have an obsession with Olivia Newton John, who was a fucking superstar in the 70s. We've got an obsession with Barry Manilow, who was a fucking superstar in the 70s. He's got a CB radio. He references Rich Little, who, again, if you're not familiar, Rich Little was a comedian whose peak era was the 60s and 70s. He did
some real Borscht Belt shtick.
Yeah, he did like a lot of variety shows and panel shows and shit. His primary act was an uncanny knack for impressions. Rich Little, actually very, very good at doing impressions.
I thought you were going to say funny, and I was going to say, well...
Honestly, I can't remember the last time I saw anything Rich Little was on, but like I just remember seeing him on like Muppet Show shit and like maybe like the original Hollywood Squares and like Password and stuff like that when it was all like
he'd pop up on like the Sonny and Cher Variety Hour. Like that's where you'd find Rich Little.
Yeah. He'd do banter with like Phyllis Diller and shit.
Mm-hmm.
God, yeah. This is just so fucking firmly in the 1970s. It's so funny. So our young man continues talking himself up, dropping a peculiar bit, but very important detail that he does, like we said, an impression of Olivia Newton John. And he claims to do a good Barry Manilow as well, demonstrates a reasonable approximation of his speaking voice. I actually looked it up. He's close. He's
Yeah, I mean,
close.
it borders a little on anti-Semitism, but hey, you know what? It's the 70s. Because he's really doing like gay New York Jew, which, to be fair, that is what Barry Manilow is.
So if you look up pictures of Barry Manilow, the reigning king of soft pop in the 70s, you'll notice that this young man's hair is very much styled in the same way as his.
And it's true.
So they talk a bit more about Beaver, small town where you drag Maine at night, you go to school in the day. But he's out of school now, and he is 21 years old, working for the Union Pacific Railroad.
It just gets darker.
But it's a small town that he loves a great deal, and he also loves KUTV too.
Yeah, he is particularly passionate about this very small town.
About this but also about this particular TV channel.
Oh yeah, no, I got a lot of notes on that one too.
Like it's his favorite TV channel, and boy. So then he takes a picture of the cameraman as the cameraman tapes him, and he's just having a great time. Then they walk across the parking lot. The young man, whose CB radio handle, like I said, is Groovin' Gary, channel 19, 323, shows him his 64 Chevy Impala, nicknamed Farrah.
And
again,
you know,
the
inside
1970s.
the inside of this car, even the fucking dashboard is like flocked.
Is like red velvet interior. And he says it's like the whole thing is like a big comfy couch. And I'm like, damn, the interior of this car is fucking awesome.
Yeah, and then he tries to close the door, and the door won't even close. Now, I have had a couple of cars where that was a problem, so I get it.
Well, my favorite was the car where the driver's seat kept coming loose from the floor.
Yes, that happened when I backed very hard into a tree.
You were like the fourth person to drive that car in the family.
Yes, I was.
Yeah. This thing is just a tricked out car. It's crazy. You got a CB radio, AM FM radio, 8-track.
He has on the fucking windows, on the side windows.
I was gonna say the best is yet to come. The windows are fucking etched.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like
One
really
of
cool
them,
like flower details and like the word like Farrah for Farrah Fawcett. Obviously, the other side says Olivia, for Olivia Newton John, and each one of the windows. This is like an old car from the 60s. So it's one of those ones where like the sort of the front corner of the window actually sort of like tilts inward and outward.
Yeah.
So that one, each one of those has this sort of like an etched engraving in the likeness of Farrah Fawcett and Olivia Newton John.
Well, I would argue that it's not quite in the likeness of Olivia Newton John.
Very much in the way that his impression is not quite in the likeness of Olivia Newton John.
Yeah, it is recognizable as a woman, maybe. Just like his impression of Olivia Newton John.
Oh, boy. Oh, we're having fun. Okay, actually, I do want to point out. So at the time of this
are you going to point out
Trent,
when he goes to drive away, the car won't even start?
he has to jump it with a fucking screwdriver.
Mm-hmm.
No, so at the time of this, Trent Harris was sort of one of the main creative forces behind a show called Extra that was on Channel 2. And it is a sort of magazine-style show that's just about like normal people and like remarkable skills and talents that they have.
Yeah, it's a human interest story magazine show.
Yeah, and this is Gary mentions it by name as he's talking to Trent like a bunch of times. Like he is clearly a big fan of that and is angling to get on that show.
And he does, and so Trent Harris, you keep saying the guy behind the camera. The guy behind the camera is Trent Harris.
I know. I keep saying that, but yeah, it is Trent Harris.
But he does say when they meet, when he starts talking to him, he says he says something like, "I produce Extra" or something. So Gary does know that is what he does. So that's probably why he turns it up a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, they chatter a bit more. Gary is hung up on the condition of his car, but eventually it's time to go. And Harris tapes Gary jumping his battery and then driving off.
Now, that should have been the end of it.
It should have been. But also, here's a weird and vaguely relevant detail that I thought was really interesting when I was reading about this. The invention of TV is credited to a few scientists, but the prime mover was an engineer named Philo T. Farnsworth from Beaver, Utah.
And also, Philo T. Farnsworth is probably the greatest name I've ever heard in my life. If I ever need an alias, I am Philo T. Farnsworth.
Yeah, the what is it? The the station engineer in UHF. His name was Philo.
Yep.
I fucking love that name. But yeah. But like, as he said, so this is the end of the Groove and Gary segment. But not exactly. Because there is so much shit that goes through here. So we now cut to a letter written to Trent, the cameraman, as I said, begging him to come down to Beaver on behalf of Channel 2 and to tape a talent show that Gary organized. Gary wrote him a letter and said, I'm putting on a talent show. Please, 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 please come down to Beaver and like film this. I really need the exposure, he says.
And I would like to point out that on the back of the envelope, he has drawn the Channel 2 logo.
No, oh boy, yeah.
It's good. Yeah, the logo is coming up a lot in this movie, but he has drawn it as it appears on Channel 2. Like, he is not kidding when he says he loves Channel 2. That would be like if I was just like, nothing I love more in the world than what was it?
WLVI, Channel 56,
WLVI.
baby.
Yeah.
But so he's desperately seeking some kind of personal exposure. And that the show might be like the whole thing kind of indicates that this might be some sort of a shallow ruse to get Trent to come to film them.
Yes, because Gary has organized a talent show, a local talent show at the, who fucking knows, it looks like it's in the school. It's like
called
high school.
Beaver High, which sounds like the name of a sex comedy.
Yep. And so he has put it together and he really wants Trent Harris to come and film this because it would be great for the show. I assure you it will not be, but Trent does agree to go because probably he was like, fuck it.
What else am I doing? Yeah, strange, peculiar detail. The talent show is being put on at 10 in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah. And not only that, Gary will be getting ready at a nearby mortuary where the mortician will be applying his makeup.
That is bleak.
Yes. And also, I don't think up to this point that we have learned what it is exactly that his performance will be.
He does say he doesn't. He doesn't say what he's going to do, but he does say he does a very good impression of Olivia Newton John, except he goes by Olivia Newton Dawn.
For some reason.
D-O-N, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
To imply that he's we never see it spelled, but I just assumed that's what it is, to imply that he is a man dressed as Olivia Newton John.
Okay. Because they always pronounce it Dawn, like almost like they're from Massachusetts.
And I think it's because they're Midwestern, maybe?
Okay. Yeah.
Or maybe that's just what they assume, because again, he probably just tells them, and he doesn't, I don't fucking know.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of speculation.
So we cut to the mortuary.
Well, you are skipping over a moment, and I'm only bringing it up because I got a good joke. We cut to Trent Harris driving in his car.
Right.
Just
we
weird B-roll.
Funning around in the car on the way down.
And the only reason I bring it up is because my note says 1979 Trent Harris looks like he jumped right out of the pages of Honcho magazine. Now, that right there, that is a joke for all the over 50 gays listening. You're welcome, Sean Abley.
So we cut to the mortuary. Gary is bantering with the mortician about how she thought this was going to go down. And it turns out that this is not the first time Gary has done this act. The last time he did it in pantomime, he keeps saying, which I think means they lip synced it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because I'm just going to guess he's not doing actual pantomime.
Right. Like he's walking in the wind and like pulling the rope and stuck in a box. And
this is where he says he's talking about what he watches, because he is very clear that Gary watches a shitload of television, which is saying quite a lot in 1979 when there's 3 channels?
Yeah.
So he is like obsessed with TV, and he says so he loves watching Channel 2, but the things that calm him down the most are Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Sesame Street.
Yeah.
And what the picture of Gary that we're starting to put together is Gary's not the coolest guy in the world.
No.
And but the impression we get of Gary is going to be very important for this entire movie.
Yeah. He also says a lot of things about like you can do this, you can get away with doing this on TV,
right?
Because everybody they'll take you seriously on TV.
Because what follows this movie is Trent Harris's belief in what Gary's life is like. And that is going to be the significant, like that is the crux of everything that happens. And so he is assembling a picture of Gary's life based on these very small interactions that he has with him. And that is going to be super important for everything else. And I think the real star of this movie is the lady at the mortuary. She is down for this whole fucking thing. This is a lady who does makeup for dead people.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're also very notable. Gary's demeanor in this scene, way different.
Which I think it's fascinating because you do every now. So Gary is goofy as fuck the whole time, but there are moments when he does seem to sort of snap into reality and realizes who he's talking to and what he's doing. And I don't want to say he has sort of a grave look on his face, but there are moments where it occurs to him, this is all very serious. And he takes this all very seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. He very clearly lives in his head. And so now he's kind of like boxed himself into this situation that he can't walk away from. This is his whole thing. And also what we're going to learn is several of the people that he kind of lined up to be in this talent show have backed out. As a matter of fact, it sounds like the bulk of them have sort of not shown up.
And he's convinced this guy to drive like 3 or 4 hours to be there. And so he's like, it's now or never.
Yeah. And he's got this vibe where he seems like his body language really suggests that he is really starting to second guess himself.
Yes.
Like the gravity of this is starting to really kind of hit him.
But this is also where we learn what he is going to do. And that is he's going to do his Olivia Newton John performance. And he goes out of his way. And this is also extremely important to everything else. He goes out of his way to explain that he understands that he is a man, and this is just for fun. He loves Olivia Newton John. She's a talented, special, beautiful creature given to us by God. That is more or less what he says.
Yep.
And hey, I'm not going to disagree. I like her a lot.
She's great. And that song, man, has been stuck in my head for a week.
It's a great song.
It's a great song.
But there's this sort of extended kind of, it's not an exchange. It's just him
him monologuing.
Desperately being like, but I get it. He's essentially trying to say, I'm not gay. This is not drag. I can do this because it's on television. If I were just doing this in the street, maybe I'd be a queer, but I'm not like that. I'm a normal guy. This is just for fun. This is entertainment. This is not. Now, this part is extremely important because this is the part Trent Harris will pick up on probably more than anything else he says in the whole fucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it does sort of make a lot of sense that he would really fret about that because it's 1979.
Yeah, it's like my note literally says, I guess at the end of the day, it's still 1979.
He's a young man doing drag in fucking Utah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, but it does have the lady doth protest too much kind of ring to it.
Well, he does. He brings it up like a couple of
Yes.
times. He really hammers this point down. Like, I'm just Dick Griffiths. You know, I don't think I like being a guy. I'm not trying to be a woman. Like he really it is like in this moment with the camera turned on him, realizing that he has got to really like sort of bring this out of the bedroom for the first time. Because he probably like sings in the car and does his shit at home all the time. But he's never done this for anybody else. Nobody in Beaver, a very small town in Utah where
he's done the pantomime.
Yeah, this is true. He has done this, but like
you get the impression that he's gotten a lot of shit for it. He's gotten a lot of shit for this. You can tell. And so what we were talking about this before we started recording is that there have been a lot of people that have interpreted this differently. That maybe this is sort of like Gary struggling with his sexuality or Gary struggling with his gender. If that's someone's interpretation, fine. We're never going to find out the answer to that. It doesn't fucking matter either. But you really, at least I think you get the impression that this is like a kid playing dress up. Like he thinks this is funny. He seems very immature. And so you can tell that he has probably done shit like this before and somebody's called him a faggot. And so he's probably gotten a lot of that in the past. So he wants to make very clear to everybody watching, he's not. This is just a performance. He understands that. He loves women. He loves being a guy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
This may seem like we're going to great pains to express this, but this is critical to the rest of the movie.
Right. And also, he does say as much. He says dressing up, getting into makeup helps you really get into character, perform better. I can attest to that. Doing The Haunt in October gave me a lot of experience with that. You feel foolish. Like I had to do that character like out of costume for the stage manager, and I felt like a fucking asshole. But
right now, could you go make people pee their pants in what you're wearing? I don't know, maybe.
Not maybe. I mean, but seriously. But like once I got the fucking makeup on and I had my costume on and shit, and I'm like stomping up and down my area, like it felt very natural and very real. And it just
you were like, I am Captain Kirk.
I'm Captain Kirk.
But no, it's I think that's very important that like he's just where he lives, the people that are around him very clearly don't really understand him. And this is part of why Trent Harris is so drawn to him, is because he recognizes that Gary's a weirdo. Yeah. And not like a weirdo in a creepy way. He's just pretty kind of eccentric, really super into TV and entertainment. He's very, gregarious and wants to get out there. But probably in Beaver, he probably does get a lot of shit from people. But you also, at the same time, you never get that impression in what we're watching.
Yeah, and that is sort of the problem is we have a sort of pinhole view into this guy's life. We get to see him for one morning of essentially for 10 minutes in the parking lot of Channel 2, and then for maybe an hour on this Saturday morning in Beaver, Utah, where he does this very bizarre thing. And then he just recedes from Trent Harris's life in a way that he's just left with nothing but fucking questions that'll never be answered. And there is this event that we're going to eventually get around to that sort of cements it and almost sticks into his heart in a way that Trent Harris can only carry this with him for the rest of his life.
We should also say that the only other person you see him interact with ever is this woman from the mortuary, and she is incredibly supportive of him.
She's so nice. I love this woman.
She talks about how funny he is and how he's, he performs for the town all the time. You get the feeling this is a very, very small town.
Yeah.
And she's super into this. He loves Beaver and we love having him. It's kind of nice. She, granted she's a lady from the mortuary, so whatever that's worth, but he also keeps saying he seems to equate dressing and performing in drag as going crazy. He says going crazy a lot. Now, this is an interesting, I would say what he's really doing is more like when men in vaudeville would perform female roles. It's goofy. The humor in what he's doing is that he's a man dressed as a woman. That's where the humor comes from.
Yeah.
That's bullshit and misogynistic. I'm gonna give Gary, I'm gonna let him off the hook for that one, but that's really that's the impression I get. It's that's his shtick. It's it's funny because I'm not Olivia Newton John and I'm not a woman.
Yep.
But because a lot of people have sort of been well, he's actually a gay or he's this and that. I do not get that impression.
No, I did. I read a couple of articles that really did seem like they were kind of trying to shoehorn queerness and transness into this, and I really struggled with that because I'm kind of oblivious in these matters at times, and so but watching this as many times as I did, not once do I ever get a hint of queerness about anything in this. That is just not a part of the equation. This is just him, literally just him doing a goof.
Yep.
Yeah. So the mortician applies more makeup. They chat about the show. I think Gary is the singer in the band that's performing all the music. They're called the B Steps.
Yes, they are. I don't know if they're his band or
they're
if
all
it's
his
just
friends. Because
they're his friends.
A couple of those guys are in the documentary about this, and they were all pretty close to it.
Yeah. And there's a weird so this is the part when there is a very strange, because this movie is this first part. It is very weirdly intimate. And this is the part where it starts to get very intimate because he's filming Gary getting ready, putting a wig on, putting makeup on. This is I don't know if this is his ritual or whatever, but trying to calm himself down a little bit and trying to get in character. And it starts to feel very, very intimate. He's also extremely close to him with the camera.
Oh yeah,
and he will
yeah,
get even
the
closer.
close-ups are like tight shots of Gary's face, like in the makeup, getting the wig on, and like this is, and it really does kind of hammer home the fact that like this is a real moment of vulnerability for Gary.
And this is also where you start. There are occasional moments where you see the act that is Groovin' Gary kind of falls away every once in a while. And there is this person who is very clearly uncomfortable and very nervous. And that's why I said, like, he doesn't seem grave in his attitude, but he does have this, like, it's a very, I don't really know how to describe it. It's a very vulnerable moment where he's like, this is all very serious now.
The way that I see it, actually, I see this like a little bit darker. I see this is a moment where like you can visibly see his confidence shrinking, like on screen.
Like, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, it is very painful to watch, like, because like he's in this situation where he's like, well, fuck, I can't get out of this. I gotta see it through. And he keeps trying to sort of put the face on, but it just doesn't stick. He is just way too nervous.
And because his confidence, we will soon learn, is perhaps a bit undue. And no amount of confidence in the world would make Groovin' Gary believe that he can actually sing like Olivia Newton John. And I think he knows that.
Yeah, when the makeup is done, Gary gets into his costume, which is like a head-to-toe black leather getup, including knee-high leather boots that I think is supposed to be reminiscent of Olivia Newton John in Grease, maybe?
Maybe, but he looks like Pinky Tuscadero with a blonde wig.
He really does. I gotta tell you, the way leather costs, man, that costume cannot have been cheap.
And it's a little bit ill-fitting. Like, it is very much what you'd expect of a small-town talent show.
Yeah. So, again, one last time he expresses doubt by insisting that this is all for fun. He's got a worried expression before he puts his wiggy on.
Gotta get my wiggy on.
Gotta go get in my threads. Yep. And it is just, it's a little hard to watch. But like once the costume's on and he seems to sort of like get a little bit of juice back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got all these opening acts. Woo!
Oh boy. Yeah. So now we cut to the mortuary exterior. Please Don't Keep Me Waiting, the Olivia Newton John song that you're going to hear about 1,000 fucking times in this movie.
It's really good.
Is playing as Gary steps out into the sun in costume, lip syncing to the song as he makes his way to the car Farah, and leaves for the show, seemingly having a great time hamming it up. So now we cut to Beaver High, which I love.
And on the fucking stage at Beaver High, they have, I don't know if it's paper mache or what, it is the Channel 2 logo.
Yeah,
big
clearly
as can
brought
be.
there by the KUTV people. Like, Gary made this.
Yeah. He loves, maybe he brought it from home. He loves Channel 2.
Has that in his room. He's like, shit, may as well bring this over. So yeah, first up is teenage sisters Joan and Judy Kessler, who sing a song called The Happiest Girl
in the Whole USA. Oh my God.
Which was a 1972 pop country song by Donna Fargo. I listened to it. It's not bad. Their version of it,
it is. These two are super uncomfortable. They clearly do not want to be up there, so they're doing their best.
Right, yeah, because the way that they are like stiff and presentational. A little later on,
they are fucking stock still in place.
A little later on, Harris is going to speculate on why that is, and he's probably not wrong.
And I mean, listen, we grew up in a town that is probably smaller than Beaver.
Oh, I guarantee.
And it would be, what you're watching is exactly what you would expect of a small town talent show in 1979. It is exactly what you see. It is no more, no less. The talent is absent for the most part. It is mediocre, it is weird, and it is awkward.
Yeah.
That's about it. The MC, wow.
The MC is the vice principal of the high school.
Yep.
So next up is Christy Erickson singing an Olivia Newton John song called Let Me Be There. It is a rough listen. Like if the happiest girl in the whole USA was a tough one, holy crap.
Same thing. Like this is a person who is not very talented, who has probably practiced this that week about 100 times in her bedroom.
Yep.
The end.
Yep. It's followed up by a troupe of girls dancing wanly to disco.
And they all look like Blair from The Facts of Life.
They do. And then it's closed out by a very, very strange comedy monologue by a
It is a vaudeville act. It is a literal vaudeville act. Like, this is the kind of shit you would see in the Catskills in the 30s.
What is it? In the I believe in the This American Life bit, which if you're listening to this, you're wondering, it's a This American Life segment called Reruns. It's definitely worth a listen. Starlee Kine says that it was a ventriloquist act.
That's what it looks like she's doing without the dummy.
You don't see a dummy. You just see her face. And
because I think she's doing the dummy herself.
Oh, no.
So she is the one talk. So she'll say a thing out of one side of her mouth, literally out of one side of her mouth, and then she will respond as the dummy out of the other side of her mouth. That's why it feels like a vaudeville act.
Oh, my God. That's so fucking weird.
It is so insanely strange to watch because you're like, why is this 16-year-old girl doing this fucking stand-up act from the 20s?
I know. Oh my God. Yeah. That's the only thing that really makes sense. Because if there were dummies, surely he would have shown the dummies.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Because he's not really doing anything. He will when Groove and Gary hits the stage in just a minute. He does sort of get a little bit up close, but for the most part, he's just sort of standing there with the camera.
Yeah.
And just shooting what's on the stage. There's not a lot of artistic flourish. He does sort of get in there when the girls are dancing, but like maybe because he was like, well, maybe I could use some of this for whatever the fucking show is, but
yeah.
He doesn't really go out of his way for much.
So yeah, 4 acts. This appears to be the extent of the entire show, minus Gary's Olivia drag show.
And they also cut to the audience. There's probably about 7 people.
And they're all the people who are in the show.
Yeah. And like maybe a family member or two.
Right.
Like whoever drove them there.
Yep. Loosely assembled in the seating, all applauding.
Yep.
So now it's time for Olivia Newton John, shot in uncomfortable close-up as Gary sings, eyes closed with an exaggerated pained expression, "Please don't keep me waiting," in a breathy high register.
And it is
not
good.
Contrary to his claims, Gary does not sound like Olivia Newton John.
Nope.
No, he jives and sings, and then, as if it couldn't get any stranger, the song comes to an end as the band can't seem to decide if there's any more to play, and an old man comes out from stage left, scoops Gary off his feet, carrying him off the stage while he playfully protests.
I would like to make very clear that when you say an old man, what you mean is a guy in a rubber old man mask.
That's what I thought.
And like a trench coat. And like I don't know if he has a hat. It is very, very odd. But again, it's that kind of like weird Borscht Belt shtick. Like this is old timey comedy. Like if someone had come out with one of those big hooks and yanked him off the stage, same effect.
Yeah, right. There's like a fully grown man dressed as like a child with a propeller beanie and a huge lollipop.
And like then that would happen and then carry off the stage and it would be like bah, 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 bah.
Well, that's the thing is like this shit was like really still quite popular on TV. Like variety shows in the 70s were like everywhere. Like Tony Orlando and Dawn, Pink Lady and Jeff, fucking the
Brady
Show,
Bunch.
The Brady Bunch hour. Yeah, like everybody, Sonny and Cher, like there was 1,000 of these fucking things. And like it was all of these people who used to just like play the fucking Catskills all the time.
Or perhaps Paul Lynde doing a Halloween special with the Wicked Witch of the West and Kiss for some reason.
Yeah, and like Liberace was always there, you know, like that kind of shit. Like this stuff was
handsome leading men like that. Real available bachelors type fellows.
Yeah. Oh man. But yeah, I do love that he's doing the Olivia voice as he's being dragged off, and then eventually he's off stage and the mic is still on and he just goes full Gary.
Yeah, and he's just like, I think that went pretty well.
Yeah, right. We cut to Gary's car. He reviews the show, feeling pretty good about the production. Thanks everybody for performing, and Trent for coming down to Beaver to help out the town, show off their performance.
This is extremely odd the way that this is arranged, because this, you would assume, this is essentially them saying goodbye to each other.
Yes.
And him thanking Trent. So you'd just be like, okay, that's going to be the end, but it's not.
It's not. So yeah, they drive away as Gary waves, but we're not done. We go back into the auditorium. The band comes back on stage. Gary comes out as himself, for one more number, meaning that like he got out of his shit and even like had all the makeup removed and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we get to hear his Manilow impression as he performs New York Rhythm. Unsurprisingly, doesn't sound a whole lot like Barry Manilow.
Nope. And I would say it's probably the most awkward part of the whole thing.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, this is the end of the Groove and Gary segment proper. And it shouldn't shock you to know that Trent never aired these tapes on Extra.
He did. So he showed them to some people. And a lot of the people that he showed them to got kind of angry with him. And they were like, you can't put this, like, that's mean. Don't put this on TV. And
yeah, because this informs what's coming.
Yes, and I will say that is, I find that almost as interesting as Trent Harris, because I did find some reviews for this movie. We can just skip them because they're positive reviews, and most people are just like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but it is really compelling. But a lot of them, there's a real elitist sort of snottiness to it where it's like, well, you do feel like you're mocking them. And it's like, why? It's just people doing a fucking, it would be like laughing at like your friend's kids doing a junior high play. It's like, yeah, they're small town people who aren't particularly talented. What the fuck did you think they were going to do for you?
I know.
So there's a real, like, there's kind of a shitty snarkiness to it. And that's why people responded to him in that way. Now, I don't know if Trent Harris thought that when he was doing it. He probably walked away and was just like, well, not much I can do with this.
I would assume that because like in all of because I've seen a ton of interviews with him about this and about other stuff. He doesn't seem, because like there is a character who's going to sort of be a stand-in for him in the future versions of this that is very clearly him sort of struggling with his place in all of this.
And given that is how he feels.
Yeah, and he is a shitty, mean character.
Yeah.
But,
and so I think he probably equated people's reactions to be like, oh, did I do something wrong? Because all he really did was this guy begged him to show up. He showed up, he filmed it, he realized there's not much there, and he leaves.
Yeah.
It's other people who say, well, you can't put this on TV. This is really mean. And it's like, well, why is this mean? It's mean because you think it's stupid. You think it's stupid because you're a shitty person.
Right. Like this is pure like outsider art, and the way that people tend to view that stuff, like particularly the stuff that seems very childish, like Daniel Johnston, or
Wesley
Willis, like that sort of thing, where like you listen to it and there is an element of the audience that is laughing at him, but like the people who truly like enjoy it are laughing like with him. Like there really is a distinction to be made between those two things. Like,
I mean, taste is extremely subjective. There's a fucking audience for everything, including this weird ass talent show.
Yeah. I remember was Ipecac Records put out a CD that really, really divided people. Have you heard of the Kids of Whitney High?
Is it the Kids of Whitney High? I remember when the record came out. There's also a documentary about them.
Yeah, and people were like horrified.
Don't steal my chicken or something like that. That's the only part I remember.
Yeah.
But it's like it's a developmentally disabled group. It's like a group of developmentally disabled teenagers, I would guess, like adolescent teenagers,
middle school and high school,
and like they perform as a group.
Yeah, and it's music. It's music, and it's all like all the lyrics are written by them. It's performed by these kids, and it.
Yeah, it's exactly what you think it's going to be. If you come to it thinking you're going to get the Rolling Stones, you're a fucking idiot. And if you laugh at it, you're a piece of shit because you know what this is.
A lot of people did come to it and laugh at it, but but a lot of the thing was like, why the fuck did you release this? And Ipecac's response, I think, was pretty good, because I kind of went at it the same way, where you listen to it and you can just hear the pure fucking joy.
Yeah.
Of them like performing this music that they have made themselves. And it's unique. It's not the sort of thing you want to fucking listen to all the time.
No. Or you buy a record because like the money goes to, whatever organization, the school or whatever. Like it's that type of thing. And like there's that when you come at something like it's a very uncritical engagement with a thing when you're just like, well, how dare they? It's very reactionary in that way. But it's like, if you stop for a minute and say, why would someone put this out? What are the possible reasons? And if you're cynical or sort of pessimistic, you might think, well, they're exploiting this or they're making fun of them. But you might also just be like, well, they're a musical group, and maybe he wanted to show them that this is, when you're in a musical group, this is one of the things that you do. You can put out records and you can get feedback and you can have people buy your records. Like, that's just fucking part of the process. Like, you know, there's a lot of shit like that. It's the same reason why, like, developmentally disabled people could go and get jobs. Are they going to become a CEO? Of course not, but they can contribute and do something. Like, it's that type of thing. It's like these, it's that lowered expectations, or what is it? Diminished expectations.
Yeah.
The tyranny of diminished expectations.
That's what it is.
Is what it's called. That's what Christians call it. It's a fucking disgusting concept, but it's
really
just
is.
like, well, you know, the fact that they put this out into the world, it's like, no, they're a musical group. That's what a lot of musical groups do. The fact that you reacted to it that way says more about you than it does about them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of that going on in here. It's just that it was something that in Gary's mind, like I think that like Trent came at it from that direction, but Gary was sort of duplicitous about this.
Well, because Gary is a dreamer. Gary believed, maybe in a moment, he believed, that he could be bigger. He could get on TV or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he does. That does not. It's not spoilers. That's not how it works out for Gary.
No.
But,
And the thing is here's the thing. There is a story here, but it's not really about. It's not really about Beaver or the people there or their various talents.
This is a story about Trent Harris.
I was going to say, this is a story of a young man and a dream, and the sense that despite his sort of warm feeling, because I really feel like that, like, yes, this is really about Trent Harris, but the bits about Gary are the parts that really kind of resonate with me, because I kind of see a little bit of myself in him as well.
So this is going to be a lot like last week, where you are taking a very different approach to how this movie makes you feel, because Gary does nothing for me. He is charming. Really? He's endearing. I like him. I understand what Trent Harris is doing.
I think that is the thing, is because I've watched, like I said, I watched this a bunch of times, but I also watched the Gary segment like several times, trying to kind of crack the fucking code. And the thing is like, I get it. Like he, despite the fact that he's very clear about it. He has very warm feelings about his hometown, but he also kind of feels too big for Utah. And like, he has this kind of like destiny, which lies elsewhere.
But he also has no fucking talent.
That's the thing. But the problem for me lies in the fact that Trent doesn't seem to be taking it too seriously. And he lets like this real kind of character study just kind of slip through his fingers. And that's
not what he's there for. He thought maybe there was a story here. Like, I think we learned nothing about Richard Griffiths in this entire movie. No. We learned a lot about Trent Harris in this movie.
Yeah.
And a lot more than he thought he was, he tells on himself over and over again in this.
But again, like, I do think that Trent eventually kind of arrives there where he was like, shit, I really kind of slept on something, because the rest of this movie is him doing his best to fill in the blanks.
I don't think that at all.
Wow. Okay.
We have to get to I can't explain why until we get to the big reveal.
Okay. Because speaking of the big reveal, there's an epilogue to this story. We'll get to that when the time comes. We're also going to leave some key details out until the time is right. That seems to sort of inform Trent's like obsession with his subject. So that detail, or rather lack of details about the story, is what kind of keeps me coming back to it. I want to know what the fuck was happening in Groove and Gary's life. Like, I'm
probably nothing.
I'm sure that if I found out, I would be super disappointed.
I mean, we've both been kicking around and been in bands and done all this dumb shit and known all these people. Like, he's a guy who had a lot of dreams and had a lot of ambition, but in reality didn't have a lot of talent. And, eventually he had to accept the fact that he probably didn't, and he moved on and got a fucking job at the end. Like, that is Gary's life. I don't think there's much there.
Did you watch part 4?
No, I told you I read a lot of really bad things about it. They were just like, this is dumb, don't bother.
Wrong. But also, it ain't great.
That was me paraphrasing. Okay. Obviously, people were a little more eloquent about it.
There's a lot of interviews with his sisters, and this moment did have a really bad effect on the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about it when the time comes.
Because it's a sobering thing where he had to realize, like, oh, I'm not. This is a thing that as someone who has had big dreams a lot in the past, it doesn't always work out the way you think it does. And you have to accept at a certain point, like, it's not going to be that. Like, hey, I'm going to be a big writer. Well, I am a professional writer, just not quite in the way that I had thought I was going to be.
Oh yeah, I got that. I got
Like,
that too.
and-
I've always wanted to like write a fucking novel and actually get it finished. I can't finish a single fucking idea that I have.
Oh God, no. God, I mean, I've pitched 1 billion to you in the last 6 months, but like, it's that idea of like, you at a certain point you have to accept that it's not going to be. It doesn't mean you have to give up, but it just means that you gotta
Adjust.
keep
You gotta
moving
adjust.
and be realistic and realize that you also have to pay your fucking bills. And there's the added thing in this case of like, he may have just embarrassed himself very, very badly.
Yeah.
And that will become apparent soon. But it does seem like it shaped him in quite a big way, because you have to let go of something that was very precious to you and that, you had pinned a lot of hope on, and you had pinned your dreams on this thing. And it's like, you're giving up a lot when you have to let that shit go. And this probably was the moment where he was like, oh, maybe I'm not good at this. This guy just came and he didn't even bother putting it on TV. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like it's a real tough moment.
Yep.
And so I get it.
So as we kind of move forward with this, bear in mind, this is the last time Trent Harris sees Groove and Gary for a very, very, very long time.
For all intents and purposes, forever.
Forever, yeah.
In very one important instance, he will be back, but
Yeah.
for the rest
So-
of his life, more or less.
So just hold that in your mind, because we're going to cut to a parking lot in California.
Can you imagine? You know nothing about this movie. You've just sat down, you watch this first part, and you're like, I don't know what that was, but I'm very confused.
Yeah.
And then it just goes black, and you're like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, it starts over again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not only does it start over again, because nobody had really seen this until 2000, not only does it start over again, it starts over again with Sean fucking Penn.
Yeah. Sean Penn taking pictures of a nearby building while a man with a video camera films him.
And it is like, they made this movie for $100.
Literally
with a
$100.
handy cam, $100, and it looks like it. It is rough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a rough watch, because that footage is in tough shape.
And so we should say, he doesn't do anything this is not cut together professionally. It's literally 3 short films back to back.
Yeah.
There's no transition. There's no like star wipe. We open again. It is hard cut.
Smash cut to a fucking
new
cover
movie.
version of the movie you just watched.
And it looks like shit. There's tracking up and down. Like whatever the original source material was is probably been sitting in a box forever because it's beat to shit.
Oh yeah. And also this is like real old school video technology.
Yeah. This is like camcorder family video.
Yep. Them
type of
kids
stuff.
making all them analog horror clips on
Yeah.
fucking YouTube are just dream of the condition of this videotape.
Yeah. And it is also worth noting there's really no script here. He had showed a bunch of people. Well, who are the other ones? The alternative casting was like Nicolas Cage, Anthony Edwards,
and Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz. So like I guess that's this, but the big 4, in fucking Hollywood at the time. But like, there's no real script. He'd showed them the original movie.
Yep.
And so all Sean Penn is really doing, he's doing his Spicoli shtick, because he's pretty young. He's not a very experienced actor.
He just came off of that movie doing that character the whole time.
And so he's really just kind of embodying this character of Gary.
Yeah.
And that's all. Because he
to the
doesn't
best
really
of his
have...
ability.
Yeah, and to the best of his memory.
Yeah.
Because there are certain moments that stick with Sean Penn, and they're the same moments that stick with the viewer as well. Things like, I love hamming it up.
Yeah.
Or he'll do the impressions. But there are also notable changes in this one.
Right.
And I think one of the most interesting ones is almost right out of the gate. We get a Groovin' Gary. I think this is he Larry at this point?
He's Groovin' Larry Huff in this one.
So in this one, he is perhaps, it's not quite so noticeable as it will be in the next one. He's a little bit more pathetic.
Yeah, this is the thing is there's details that make me wonder if Harris kind of missed them the first time and only came because they come back into play in the third version of it. But in this one, like, Sean Penn seems to be kind of fully in control of his interpretation of the character. Like, I don't know what kind of direction he was given, but like, it's not a very good version. It's definitely not the Gary that we just saw.
No, the third one will be very obviously scripted.
Yeah.
And so this is someone who is operating, it's very extemporaneous, and it is from memory based on the thing he's probably seen once, maybe twice.
Yeah. So he ambles over, enthusiastically asking if he's taping him. The man with the camera tells him that the whole world is watching.
Yep, that big old bear, Trent Harris.
Yeah. So they talk a bit. The cameraman tells him that he works on a show called Extra. Sean tells him that he's lucky he found him. He's an impersonator. So Trent hands him a microphone. Actually, Terrence is the name of the camera guy in this one. And off he goes. He explains that he does Olivia Newton John, but he doesn't have his backup, so he'll do John Wayne instead. And excitedly waves and says hi to Beaver, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Terrence asks him what he does in Beaver. Tells him that he's the Beaver Rich Little.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you drag strip at night, go to school in the day.
Yep.
I'd
explain who Rich Little is, but we already did that. Yep.
It's almost like it must have been so jarring to be like, what is this? Is this why are we watching the same thing?
I know.
Sean
Penn?
Penn?
Like, what the fuck is the deal here?
Because you have to remember, all of what we're telling you, dear listener, when people saw this, they had none of this information. All they knew is that they were going to watch a movie that is called the Beaver Trilogy. That is all the information they had.
Yeah.
And that maybe it had Sean Penn in it.
Yeah. So he also says that he loves television, which I think is a detail missing from the previous segment, which was added for this iteration.
He does sort of say, oh man, I love TV. I love hamming it up.
Yeah.
He implies it, and he says as much, but like he digs in a little bit more here because
he's
again,
way more obvious in this one.
Yeah,
like because what he then says is, if you get on television, people take you seriously.
Yeah, this version of Groove and Gary is somehow much less guileless.
Yeah,
if that's possible.
Yep. So before it can go much further, Terrence opens his camera up and is disappointed to find that the reel is all messed up.
Which this also kind of happens in the first one.
Oh, really?
Well, there's a minute where something fucks up, like the audio fucks up, because the way that these things used to work is you had a camera and then you had a microphone that was plugged into the camera.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point when he's filming him in the first one, something happens where it kind of fucks up and it gets a little garbled or whatever. But this is a little bit bigger, and his reaction to it is a little bit bigger.
Right. Because he opens it up and it's just like a bird's nest of like videotape inside the camera.
Yeah. It's like when your boombox would eat your cassette. Remember, everybody, when that would happen? I shake my fist at the clouds.
So he excuses himself to go fix it, but not before Sean Penn introduces himself as Larry, and the two go their separate ways amid some familiar chatter from the previous segment about getting on the set, making the tube.
I don't know how to describe this movie. It is the most thought-provoking thing I've ever seen, because what you have to imagine here is that they are recreating something that has ostensibly happened in real life, except they're doing it without knowing the intentions or the motives of one of the most important people in the original thing.
Yeah.
So Trent Harris now has to replicate something that really happened, but he has no idea what actually happened. And that's the point of these movies, essentially. This is why he will keep doing this.
But also, there was a purpose to this, because what ends up happening is almost almost right after the Groove and Gary thing, Trent Harris sort of picks up stakes and moves to Hollywood with sort of like the dream to sort of like get into film and make movies and stuff like that. But up until this point, like, he wants to make features and shit. But up to this point, all he's got is like documentary footage of stuff that he did.
And
Extra.
this.
And so he
goes with this. He leads with this.
Right. So I think,
come on, man.
I think it stuck out to him probably because he's like, I can do this quickly. I know what happened. I can make this really fast and really cheap. But also at the same time, I believe that this sort of thing just has been haunting him.
Oh, I think he may have told himself that was why he's doing it. If you listen to the interview,
Well, he made it a
Starlee
third
Kine,
fucking time, so
well,
obviously
if you
there's a
listen
deeper
to
meaning to this.
the interview with Starlee Kine, you realize that Trent Harris is not a dummy. He knows why he's doing this. Or he more or less understands why he's doing it. Maybe now. Maybe not in 1981. He perhaps did not understand why he was doing it. So he may have said, oh, I'm going to do this, and this will be my real, whatever. And it's like, no way, man. You're doing this for you, and we are going to find out why soon. I hate being real cagey about it, but it's super important that we don't give it away.
It's very fucking important, and it really ties the whole thing together.
Yes, but the idea that like, oh, he made this as a real, no fucking way he did. This thing looks like shit. It sounds like shit. Fucking Coppola's rolling in with like Apocalypse Now, and he's like, oh, but I want to be in Hollywood too. Here's my tape.
Yeah, let me tell you what Roger Corman could have done with $100.
Yeah, no fucking way. By the end of this, you understand exactly what he's doing, and it has nothing to do with being a Hollywood director.
No. So now we cut to a high school. Larry Huff talks to the vice principal about putting on a talent show in the Beaver High Auditorium, and Harris uses this segment to fill in some blanks and work out some personal shit about his feelings of Gary at the time.
Yeah.
The vice principal is unaware of any talent show, and Larry sort of insinuates that he and Channel 2 are tight.
And so this is where you have to wonder all those people that are saying, you can't put this on TV. This is pathetic. This is sad. If Trent Harris only has this original movie as a reference for who Gary is, there must be something about Gary that he sees as, at best, melancholy, maybe a little bit sad, at worst, a little bit pathetic.
I think that at this point, like he's still kind of fresh out of Utah. I think that there was probably some sort of anger that went with this. Like, I kind of got used. This guy kind of like sort of manipulated.
He's going to love Hollywood then.
Oh, I know. Right. But I mean, sure. I mean, that's the same thing. Is like, again, like I said, there's a sort of a reflective quality between Gary and Trent that I think
it's the same thing that motivates Trent Harris to film him.
Yeah, they have more in common than I think he wants to admit. Like,
and he's
just as naive.
Yeah, he has said as much. Like that again in that Starlee Kine interview, he did essentially say like, I see a lot of myself in Gary, and that was what really drew me to him, and that's why I think I kept filming him. I kind of felt this need. I believe the quote is like, I felt like I had to keep filming him. Because again, all of this is about Trent Harris. This is not about Gary. This is not about Richard Griffiths at all. And so there is a weird meanness a little bit to this second one. Not quite to the extent.
Just this one, because he seems to sort of reverse his course in the next one.
Oh, very much so. But yeah, there is a little bit of like, he's making value judgments about, not just about Gary, but about the people of Beaver.
Yeah. Yeah.
And probably because he just got to Hollywood and people are looking at his shit and they're like, what the fuck is this?
Right. Yeah.
Is this a vaudeville act from a teenage girl? Why are you showing me this?
Yeah, right.
Is this a snuff movie?
It's like, is there a dummy in this act?
And you also, again, we get this sense that maybe this is where we start to pick up on the idea that maybe he was reading Gary as, if not gay, weirdly obsessed with Olivia Newton John. Now, Gary does seem to like Olivia Newton John quite a lot.
He does really like Olivia Newton John.
But, a lot of people did, and for a lot of different reasons. But like,
again, she was like the biggest fucking star in the world in 1979. I mean, Grease was fucking massive.
And you start to get the feeling though, that like maybe Trent thought that Gary also might have been gay. And
I would imagine
there's nothing about Gary that comes across that way.
No, but I would imagine that definitely went through his head.
Because again, homophobia is going to play a huge role in this movie.
Right. So yeah. Larry writes a letter to Terrence asking him to come down and shoot an extra segment, just like the letter from the previous segment. Then we cut to Terrence reading the letter.
But we get this added bonus of him being like, hey, get a load of this shit.
Right, because now we cut to him reading the letter, which feels a little confessional, as Terrence is really shitty about it, seeing an opportunity to shoot something crazy and a little silly, but with mockery in mind.
Yeah. Or at least the potential for something disastrous to happen.
Right. So now we cut to Larry in his room singing Please Don't Keep Me Waiting into a hairbrush. And then in their car driving down, Terrence and his assistant smoke a joint and are incredulous at the small town vibe of Beaver.
Something tells me that they probably did smoke a joint on the way down there because it comes up again.
Yeah, everybody's just smoking the devil's lettuce in 1979.
Smoking a doob.
Yeah. And so they pull up on the mortuary where Larry is chatting it up with the mortician. I
gotta ask, is this the same woman?
It looks like her. Oh my god.
Because they filmed all three of these are shot in the same place.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that they went back to
Yep.
Utah
because he was like, he was like, if I'm gonna try and recreate it, why don't I just go back and do it?
Damn. All right.
And so they do it because this woman all the people in this one look exactly the same, which would make sense because it's like a year and a half later.
Right. Yeah. So she is the only person to pull through, help with his makeup.
She's a fucking star. Star of the second one.
He insists
Sharon or whatever her name is. I'm gonna call her Sharon.
Yeah. He insists that this whole thing is just a goof and that he enjoys being a guy while the mortician smears makeup on his face.
With her bare hands, which I thought was really strange, because like if this was a professional makeup, like a person who does it for like film or whatever, she'd be using sponges or brushes or whatever. This lady is just like fucking slather it
on dead bodies.
She does corpse makeup.
Yep. So he remarks about how his Olivia
I think if I was doing corpse makeup, I would want sponges. I would want sponge gloves.
Yeah. Oh, boy. No, he remarks about how his Olivia Newton John impression is a gift from God.
No, he says her voice is a gift from God.
Oh, shit, really? I thought
because that's essentially what Gary says in the original one, is that she is a precious, beautiful, precious baby angel given to us by God. And that is what he says in this one, is that her voice is a gift from God.
I was confused, yeah.
Because at first I was like, did he just say his voice is a gift from God? Because I'll tell you what, Gary's definitely isn't. Sean Penn's sure isn't either.
Oh, no. So, this is almost a one-to-one scene for the previous version. But somehow weirder by showing Trent by way of Terrence as the snickering shithead. This guy kind of pours his heart out about performing.
And he's like a real, like he may as well be twirling his mustache.
Oh, my God, for real. Detail that Harris sneaks into the monologue is once again Larry remarking that you can do anything if you're on TV. Okay, so this is the thing: is in the last one we made a lot of hay about the way that sort of like Gary's like demeanor is different, how his confidence is gone. I notice in this one that Sean Penn, and maybe it's just that Penn didn't notice it or Harris didn't notice it and like press it, but there's none of that.
Yeah. He's super like he's getting himself jazzed. And I don't know if I read Gary's demeanor precisely the way you do, but there is a noticeable shift in his vibe. I could just be projecting.
But I feel like I watched it a few times.
There is something that changes in him, and I don't know if he's either starting to take it very seriously or he's starting to second guess himself, but there is a noticeable shift in the tone of the moment in his face, because he does in the original one, he drops the goofy laughing.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden it's just like, there's something very serious about this moment. And you don't know what the seriousness is, but something has changed. And Sean Penn doesn't seem to pick up on that.
He doesn't.
He seems to just barrel through.
None of that in this performance. This is almost him just kind of like doing it like
Jeff Spicoli.
Yeah. I mean, it really is like a Spicoli impression, like that.
To say that there is good acting in any of this movie is a real stretch. Like, it's just these two fucking dudes doing the characters that they are.
I would argue that you are wrong there about Courtney Gaines.
Okay, all right, fine, but also Dottie. Don't sleep on Dottie.
Also, Dottie's in this. But the scene ends mostly like the first version, where Larry leaves to get into his threads. Comes back in a costume, remarkably
Gotta get my
similar.
wiggy on.
We gotta get this wiggy on.
Because those are the moments that Sean Penn remembers. Gotta get my wiggy on. Time to go get in my threads.
Gotta get in my threads. Yep. It comes back in a costume remarkably similar to the version from before.
That's where all their $100 went. Yep. Those fucking leather pants.
Yeah. So the mortician helps him get his wiggy and his earrings, while Larry once again reiterates that he's not trying to be a girl, that he's a man, and that it's all just for fun.
And this is... In the first one, you're like, okay, we get it. You're not a queer, Gary. I understand. In this one, it feels very intentional. Like this is this like it's all leading to this moment. Be like, but don't get it wrong. Like it's played up more this time.
It does seem to be featured more prominently for sure. Yeah. So yeah, once again, Olivia Newton John gets up, leaves the mortuary. Penn's walk and the way that he carries himself is actually remarkably similar to Gary because he's got this weird way of like, wearing that outfit.
Leather pants are tight, and I don't think Gary or Sean were expecting quite that.
Yeah.
Women's leather pants are not made for men to wear for a particular reason.
Yeah. So we cut directly to the talent show this time.
Now here we're going to get pretty much the same performers. I would argue they are the same people.
No, he just reuses the footage.
That was going to be my question. With the exception of the MC, because we're going to get us a new sassy MC.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell you what, Miss Thing is doing a lot of eyebrow work in this scene.
Yep.
And coming from someone who's pretty critical later,
Yeah. So he, reuses footage. Cuts to backstage as Larry watches the show.
Because I was going to ask if he's just using the footage, why is there a new MC? But I guess that sort of explains itself later.
Yeah. So when it's time to hit the stage, there's no band this time. He just plays a backing track.
He also cuts out the weird vaudeville act.
This is right. Yeah. This time, like really, the only opener we see is the girl doing the other Olivia Newton John song. Like it's just one opener this time. And so he plays a backing track.
Now we also get the same. I love the fucking USA or whatever the fuck it's called. the girl who couldn't love America. Whatever the song.
The
is.
happiest girl in the whole USA.
Yeah, you get that one.
Yep. And so he goes out to the stage singing in a breathy high register, not even remotely close to Olivia Newton-John.
And somehow worse than Groove and Gary?
I know. Yeah, the meanness and mockery is much more in the fore this time around. Because there's also a little bit of Terrence and his assistant like watching and just like having a fucking laugh as this is going on.
And this is the first time you notice that he is very clearly, Trent Harris is very clearly, he's obvious about where the mockery is coming from. Like it is coming from this character that is him.
Yeah.
And he's very specific about like, this is the bad guy.
Yeah. He is portraying himself as the villain in this story.
Which is strange
because he's got to feel like complicit in something, but he's never really obvious about what that is, though.
Well,
we'll get there.
Comments on that.
We're gonna get there.
We're very nearly there.
It's all right, coming around the bend. So yeah, Terrence takes the camera, gets up on stage where Larry really hams it up. When the song,
he loves hamming it up.
Yep, just you can tell I love hamming it up. Larry awkwardly shuffles off stage where the vice principal waits for him.
And they got rid of the guy in the old man mask.
Yep, not
which
this
I
one.
would argue, good choice.
Because obviously Harris looked at that and was like, what the fuck was that all about?
I was like, that's the weirdest part of the whole thing.
So now Harris imagines in this scene that Gary was confronted with the possibility that this was a bad idea that put Beaver and himself in a bad light. And so Larry imagines that TV people are going to come calling and he'll break big.
Yeah, except the MC is like, you look like a faggot, Gary. What are you doing?
I think he calls him a fruit.
He does call him a fruit. It's actually kind of awesome. He goes, they're not going to call. They're going to call you a fruit. And I thought, real rich coming from you, buddy.
So we now cut to Larry in his apartment. He calls
I'm
Terrence.
implying that this man is very obviously homosexual. He's basically, remember when we watched The Siege? And there's one guy in the gang that's like, guys, come on. The police are coming.
Right. Boy, that guy was...
He's basically that, where he's just like, Gary, you look really gay out there on stage. You're making us all look bad.
Just a few too many S's.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, he calls Terrence.
Such a big fuss over a couple extra S's.
We cut to Larry in his apartment. He calls Terrence and nervously asks him not to run the segment, offering to pay for his time and his expenses. He worries that people might take it the wrong way. And then Terrence assures him that it's all good. He worked hard on the segment, that people will love it. Larry hangs up and turns to grab a rifle, putting the barrel in his mouth.
And it's tough. I hate scenes like this. I don't know why I find
this one
that.
is really fucking intense too.
It's the graininess of it.
Yeah.
The quality
it almost
of the
feels
film.
like a person like filming their own suicide.
Yeah, like remember Bjork's bomb
that
video?
came to
It's
mind
that
immediately. Yes.
where I'm like, wow, I can never unsee that moment.
Yep. So he hesitates, and then the phone rings, and the girl on the other end tells him that she thought the performance was funny and that she can't wait to see it on TV. She's having a party. She'd like him to come down, do the Olivia Newton John number.
Olivia Newton
John. He puts the wig on and sings "Please Don't Keep Me Waiting" into a hairbrush while crying. The lyrics to the song.
One of the hardest things I've ever seen in my life.
It's not just that. It's that the lyrics to the song take on some really heavy symbolism here.
Yep.
Please don't keep me waiting. I can't hold on much longer. Please don't keep me waiting. I can't take this kind of pain.
And now everybody who's listening has been waiting for an hour and 45 fucking minutes.
I appreciate your patience. I was actually going to wait until the end of the next one, but I'm glad you brought it up. Fuck it.
It fits here. It's important to say it here.
Yes. So what actually happens, and this is revealed to us in the Starlee Kine interview.
Which is wild because were it not for that, we would never know that this happened.
Right. And so for a long time, like people would ask about this and he would push back being like, no, don't worry about it. Like I just made this up. But in this interview, she asks him. He
didn't make it up.
No. This actually happened. Gary almost like the next day calls him up like in the middle, like really early and asked him like, please don't run that segment. Like I'll pay for I'll cover your expenses.
I think he leaves him a message. I don't think he actually talked to him.
Oh, okay. I kind of got the feeling that he did, but that would actually make sense if he did leave a message because
he never had any intention of using any of this stuff. Like he probably watched it while it was happening. And was like, this is a bust.
Yeah. And then, so what ends up happening is Trent realizes that he left a microphone in Gary's car. And so he calls, I think the only number that he had was like I think he might have been living with his sisters or something.
Yeah, it's either for his sister or his friend.
And the person who answers, it was just, in the documentary, it's his sister who says, Trent called and we told him that I think that in the interview with Starlee Kine, he words it really weird.
He says, Gary had an accident with a gun.
Yeah.
That would make sense for 1979. It would make sense now, honestly.
Yeah.
If you don't want to. This is a stranger, wording. Essentially.
Yeah, it's very peculiar wording because it's almost like he just does not want to accept his role in this. Because what ends up happening, we end up finding out in the Beaver Trilogy Part 4 documentary is that it wasn't an accident. No. Gary loaded a rifle and shot himself in the chest with it, and he survived it, though.
And I think it's unfair to say that Trent Harris has any role in that. This is not.
No. But
Gary doesn't do a vaudeville show and then the next day shoot himself. Gary has probably been thinking about this for quite a long time.
The thing is that I
want to make sure like we're not saying that Trent Harris plays any role in what is happening.
To be clear, no. The idea I'm trying to put across is, I am not putting that on Trent. I think that he put that on himself.
Absolutely. I think that's why he keeps making this fucking movie. Why he keeps
coming back to this fucking story is he is trying to figure out, what the fuck have I done here? Because he's going to do it again. That's the problem. Because what happens is
he doesn't have anything, because he never talks to him. He calls this thing. He calls the hospital. I think the hospital
tells him that he was shot.
Yeah, which Jesus.
Yeah,
HIPAA.
They'll fucking tell anybody.
They didn't have it then, but like they're also smoking in the room, so it doesn't fucking matter. But it's just he never gets answers, so he has to try to assemble this again, and so he has to live with for a decade or more. What did I do? Did I cause this person? And he has no answer. He cannot speak to this person. He just has to put the pieces together himself. And what happens is that just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. And he keeps making himself the bigger villain. And he keeps making Gary this sort of like little fawn in the woods.
Right, because he does eventually kind of leaves behind the whole thing where he was kind of lured down to this thing.
Yeah,
where
he leaves out the fact that like he went to that studio to try to get on TV. Gary orchestrated this whole thing.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean we shouldn't have sympathy for Gary. We absolutely have sympathy for Gary. But Trent Harris envisions himself as the villain, and it spins wildly out of control to the point where he feels like such a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what to do with that. And he keeps trying to replay it. That's why he keeps making this movie to be like, I must have done something bad.
You could totally understand why he places himself in that role. Like this, if I had just witnessed this person really just kind of putting it all out there and being vulnerable, with the intention of being vulnerable in front of, potentially all of fucking Utah. And then I find out that like he was so embarrassed by this that he shot himself. That's fucking traumatic. Like I would also like live with that, especially the fact that he never got back in touch with this guy. He has no fucking idea what happened to this guy.
Now, this is why I brought up that Errol Morris book, because we only know Gary we know a shitload about Trent Harris. Yeah. We know from inference, we know from interviews, we know from all this stuff. All we know about Gary is what we see in that first one. For all we fucking know, Gary could have been a child murderer. We know Gary.
Yeah.
I'm being, I'm being extreme and glib for a reason, but like all we know is this one instance. And that's all Trent Harris knows as well. All he knows is that he engaged with this guy, then this thing happened. Ergo, it must be his fault that this thing happened. The truth is, you don't know a fucking thing about this guy. He could have been suicidal for years. He could have been out of his mind on drugs in that moment. Like, you know nothing. But the fact that he knows nothing is what causes him to keep making these films, because he cannot get an answer. He could have realistically gone and found this thing and resolved this, but he didn't want to because it would have either confirmed it or refuted it, what he believed about himself. This whole fucking stretch of movies is all about Trent Harris. And it's all about his need to feel bad and to make amends for something he believed he did, when the reality is Trent Harris didn't do anything. No. This guy invited him, he showed up, he left and was just like, hey dude, don't fucking worry about it. Or the guy called and was just like, please don't use that. And he was like, well, I'm not going to call him back. Don't worry. I'm not going to fucking use it. Like, he never did anything. And yet he feels really responsible, as I think most people would. You would, at least on some level, even if you're the biggest. I take that back, given our opening. There are some people who would capitalize on tragedy.
True.
But for the most part, anybody would feel like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Because in those moments, you cannot be rational. You can't be like, of course I didn't. Like, if this guy was going to do this, he was just going to do this. Like, I didn't push him to do this. If someone wants to kill themselves, they're going to. And I say this as someone who worked for like 10 years with very, very mentally ill people. They will do this if they want to. It has nothing to do with you, ever. And yet he feels very, very bad. And because he cannot get any insight or any answers, it just spins wildly out of control. Because in this one, he is a sort of like sleazy, kind of dirtbag guy. In the next one, he is literally mustache twirling villain. And because he can't get any answer, it just keeps going. And he thinks, I have done something so horribly bad and wrong. And he really didn't. He did nothing.
No.
And yet he cannot let it go. It's wild, but this is all about Trent Harris. This is about one man's interpretation of an event. He knows nothing about this guy. He has no idea what was going on. And that's why I think it's weird to be like, well, he and Sean Penn have to go and reenact this thing. You have no idea what he was thinking about when he said this stuff or did this stuff. Maybe, for all we know, maybe he was struggling with his gender or he was struggling with his sexuality. It doesn't seem like it, but maybe he was. That's certainly a reason why people have killed themselves many, many times. Like, we just don't know these things. And so he has to project, and he starts projecting really fucking hard in this one.
Yeah.
And it goes way over the top in the next one.
It does.
Buckle up, everybody. This is the longest episode we've ever had.
Good God. Yeah. Like I honestly, when I finished, I was like, holy shit, I've got like way more notes than like our Sunset Boulevard episode, which I think was like our most heavily researched one.
Yep.
So, hey, cut to a desert ridge at dusk.
The Orkley Kid.
The Orkley Kid, a figure in silhouette, scarf blowing in the wind, steps to the top of the ridge as Please Don't Keep Me Waiting plays.
And I think this is super interesting because whereas the last one just hard cut opens on the parking lot, in the opening of this movie, where clearly they had a lot more money, he's already glamorizing this character.
Yes, yeah. Beaver Kid 2, the one that we just talked about, is completely artless. This one is stylized. It's got a budget. It has a cast. It's got extras. Yeah, he really is like working it out on this one. It looks good.
But like from the moment we enter, Gary, or Larry, as it were in this one, he is already sort of being presented in these very grandiose ways. Like he's doing this big performance out on the desert.
Yeah, just singing it up under the stars.
Yeah, where like, you know, his fucking Stevie Nicks Gold Dust Woman robes and scarves are flowing in the wind.
Yeah.
It's how I imagined myself when I walked on the street.
So at home, Crispin Glover, playing Larry, sneaks back into his room.
By way of George McFly.
Yep. Waking his mother, who wants to know what he's doing. He quietly puts the wig away, dismissing his mom.
This is our first look at, we have got hints at homophobia in the other ones. This one is going to lean in real fucking hard in ways that are very sad and uncomfortable. But just the fact that he is locking away this costume to hide it away from his mother.
Symbolic as hell.
But the reality is, in the first one, in the original one, there's no reason to think that this is discouraged. The only point of reference we have in Gary's life is the mortuary woman, my star. She's super
totally
into this.
And she's totally into it. Yeah.
But by this point, Trent Harris has decided that this is a big source of shame for this person. And so he has to not only hide it, he like locks this shit away.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, still in costume, he reflects on the Xanadu poster in his room. Olivia Newton John prominently featured, moodily lit by what light there is in the room, filtering through the fish tank. It's a cool shot.
Yeah. This is like a huge step up.
Yeah. So the next day, Larry goes to a diner, huge personality intact, where everybody seems mostly annoyed by him, except for his one friend, Merrill. Larry sits down with him, does a Marlon Brando impression.
Not very good.
Not very good. No. The patrons invite him to shut up. Undaunted, Larry keeps on.
Yeah, he just wants some coffee from Dottie.
Yep. It's right. It's Elizabeth Daly as Carissa, the waitress. You know her from such films as Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where she played Dottie. She's in fucking Valley Girl. She's this dance singer in Better Off Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I forgot about that. E.G. Daly.
E.G. Daly. I think she also does the song in this one that the dance troupe dances to. But yeah.
He also, I believe when they're sitting there, this might be when he says, "I would make a cute fox."
Yes, that's what he says. His friend has been working on repairing his car. He wants to know why he needs it so bad, and Larry reveals his plan to go to Boise, Idaho, where he plans to get on television.
You know, where all the actors go.
Yep.
Boise, Idaho, where you want to get on TV. I think what's really interesting is that, again, in the second one, we get these sort of hints of like how he perceives Gary. In this one, he is just full on projecting tons of shit onto this person, how the town perceives him, how he's the super underdog. And again, all of this is really just there in service of villainizing himself.
Yes.
Because Gary is going to become the kind of underdog.
Yes, he is. Yep. So Larry borrows his friend's car, drives off to Boise. At Channel 2, he tries to talk the receptionist into letting him talk to a producer or something. But she informs him that that's not how it works and that he should write a letter. And
the reality is this is probably what really happened.
Yes, probably. I would imagine that, like, either Trent eventually finds out that this is what like Gary was doing at Channel 2, or he just kind of like correctly fills in the blank. This feels very reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes out to the parking lot, takes some pictures, spotting a cameraman prepping a big-ass video camera. And just like before, he goes over, starts hamming it up. You can tell I love hamming it up. This time, however, he's not from Beaver. He's from Orkley, Idaho. And he tells the guy that he's an impersonator. Terrence, the cameraman, presents him with a microphone, tells him to go for it. He does
He's chomping on his cigar.
That's
winding a bale of TNT.
in a stained white beater.
Uh-huh.
So he
takes off his top hat.
Ties a lady to the train tracks.
Mm-hmm.
He does an impression of John Wayne. Just like before, the camera breaks, and Terrence, the cameraman, has to cut it short. Larry goes home, runs into his friend Merrill at the laundromat, telling him, just like Larry in the previous segment, told the school vice president that he's tight with Channel 2 now. Goofing around with Merrill's sister's bra, he insists that he'd make a cute fox.
Nice.
Yep. So Larry
but
goes
again, we're getting that idea of like, oh, he's being goofy about gender stuff.
Yeah. So Larry goes to the vice principal to pitch him on using the auditorium for the talent show, recruits him to be the MC. Then he goes to the diner again, talks to the waitress, Carissa, about like being in it. Like, hey, you play the accordion? I think he asks her.
Does she actually play the accordion?
Maybe. But Larry tries to recruit her for the talent show while some local assholes put a tack on his seat.
You know, old-timey comedy.
You know. And one of the local guys volunteers his daughter and some other people for the talent show.
And he also, quite notably, sticks up for Gary, Larry, because they're being mean to him, and he's just like, "You kids, he's a nice boy," blah blah. Because this guy will come back a little bit later.
Yeah. So in Boise, Terrence receives a letter from Larry inviting Channel 2 to the talent show. Once again, Terrence is a huge dick who thinks the talent show will be a freak show worth taping for laughs.
Yeah, now his response is even bigger.
Yeah. So at the high school, Larry sets up the stage with Merrill, revealing that everyone who said that they'd help out bailed on him because they don't take him seriously. And meanwhile, Terrence and his assistant smoke a joint, drive into town, laughing at the small town vibe.
Also, Merrill keeps trying to get him to tell him what they're going to do. Like,
yes,
what
and he
song
will not
is
tell
it?
him. Because Merrill's
like-
going to be in the show with him.
Like, hey, man, if you're expecting them to back you up, you kind of have to tell them in advance.
I know, you don't want to surprise them with their performance
Because
on the night.
What if they don't know that song?
I have nightmares about this.
I had a nightmare last night that I accidentally cut my beard too short and then had to shave it all off. It's sort of similar to that.
Yeah, it definitely is. I can see the resemblance. Meanwhile, Terrence and his assistant... I said that part. So, yeah, they meet Larry in the mortuary where Larry is trying to talk the mortician into making him up like Olivia Newton John. This time, it's different. The woman is like...
she is quite noticeably uncomfortable with this idea because she even says, but that's a woman.
Right. And I want to know why he changed that. Because like, that character
this
has
is
been
where
consistent from the start.
This is where he's really leaning in. Maybe the biggest takeaway for him, and this would maybe make a little bit of sense, is that I think he feels like he outed him in some way.
Okay, yeah.
In that, because he really seems to think that the fact that he's doing this in drag is sort of the thing that is undergirding all of this. When the reality is, you kind of get the feeling he just feels like he made a big fool of himself.
Yeah.
The drag part is like, that's you doing that. You're the one who's saying all of this stuff and saying like, you know, because he does actually, I mean, originally we've talked a lot about it. He really goes out of his way to be like, but I'm not, that's not me. Really, because it's 1979 and he quite reasonably does not want people to get the wrong idea because it's also fucking Utah.
Yeah.
But in this one, there is this idea of people being like, wait a minute, you want to do what now?
I know.
Are you one of them? And it's like, you, Trent Harris, seem to think that he is.
Right.
All of a sudden, and it is made very clear in this one because they will come back to this a bunch of times in ways that are really not, they were not comfortable to watch. And so it's really strange. It's like from the very start, you can tell which part he thinks is the most important. What is the critical moment? And it's this thing. It's his sort of steadfast refusal that he is not like that. And you know, it's reasonable that he would pick up on that because he really does go out of his way. And it's like, in a way that maybe we understand better now, like it's, you know, in 1980 or 81 or 79 or whatever, you were either gay or not. You were a man or a woman. If you did drag, it's because you're gay. And now we understand that there is a lot more to it than that. And
Correct.
Some people understood it then. Very, very few. And certainly not Trent Harris.
No, because as the lady is like, I don't know if I should do this, Larry. Terrence is going like, yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, make him up like a dame.
Yeah, he's really going out of his way to be like, this fucking sack of shit over here.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, that's you. Come on, man. It's not your fucking fault.
I know. So,
but he really seems to think that it is.
Yep.
That he pushed, because he does say in the original one, he does say something like, no, it'll be great. Like, just to sort of be encouraging.
Right. Right.
And he's just like, no, get out there, man, it'll be fine.
It's this moment in his past that he has placed a tremendous amount of emphasis on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Larry explains that it's all good when you're on TV as she smears makeup on his face, and he insists that...
Still just with her fucking bare hands. I don't know why. That was a big moment for me. I felt uncomfortable with that.
Yep. So, yeah, he insists, in spite of doing an Olivia Newton John number, that he's a guy, he likes being a guy, it's all for laughs, blah, blah, blah. Unlike Sean Penn, though, Crispin Glover seems keenly tuned in to Gary's trepidation from the original segment.
I will say, I've as much as I've said the acting is not good, I do actually think that Crispin Glover does a pretty good job in this role. He is just doing the George McFly thing, but it is working very well.
Yeah, it meshes with this particular character.
Because they have the same discomfort with people.
Yeah.
Like George McFly in Back to the Future, everything he says is followed with this uncomfortable kind of breathy chuckle.
Yeah.
Same thing with Gary, is like everything except his is more of a guffaw.
Also, Crispin Glover does the Gary laugh perfectly.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it's like, we don't think of Crispin Glover as being what I would call a great actor. He's a specific kind of actor.
Yes. Yeah, he is.
But every now and then he turns it out and you're like, oh, look at that. The old gal still got it.
Yeah. So yeah, this version of the makeup and costume scene is much shorter as well, omitting the entire costume reveal until it's time to take the stage.
Where we see a weird baton twirling act.
Right. At the auditorium.
We get Malachi from Children of the Corn.
Yep. The MC introduces the two sisters from the first segment as they joylessly sing a rather rushed version of The Happiest Girl in the Whole USA.
Which you notice that it is, in a lot of ways, this third one is a lot meaner.
Yes.
To the townspeople.
To the town, yes. Because again, like he is trying to this is almost a hagiography of Groove and Gary.
Yeah. And so he, with the sisters, he inserts their mother into this act as though like this is sort of her attempt to kind of reclaim that lost glory.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of weird assumptions being made, and perhaps some presumptions being made about the people of this town, that in this way where he's trying to make himself feel more villainous, it's like, yeah, but you're actually kind of being an asshole.
Yeah, because I mean, the way that this segment actually ends is he puts this all on Beaver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they're doing I think the baton twirling, that replaces the dancing girls.
I think so, yeah.
And then
the
very
dancing
end,
girls are actually in this one.
Are they still in it?
Right.
The
twirlers replace the
vaudeville
ventriloquist lady.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call her a ventriloquist, but you're being generous.
You're being generous.
And then at the end of the baton twirling, the woman just drops it just to make it that much worse. Just to really dig it in.
Yeah. So as Larry gets his wig on in the men's room, a couple of guys come in with a real bathroom emergency. One of them is Courtney Gaines.
And this is some real 80s shit right here.
Yeah. Yeah. When he walked in, I was like, is that fucking Courtney Gaines? Awesome.
There is.
So it forces Larry to emerge from the stall in drag, shocking them both. On stage, there's more acts. Lady twirling a baton. Larry goes backstage to find Meryl waiting in the dressing room in a gorilla suit.
Oh, yikes.
I know. Everyone who sees him is shocked. Now, Larry introduces himself to Meryl as Olivia Newton John.
Which I think is a fucking fantastic name and has surely been used by someone else.
Oh, it's got to be on like Drag Race at some point.
But this is also when Meryl says, geez, why don't you do your Sammy Davis Jr. or something? And I thought, I don't know, Meryl. I think that would have been a worse choice.
Yep. Oh, God, because you know there's going to be blackface.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Larry tries to reassure him that when you're on TV, it's okay. People understand. Some girls perform a dance number while Larry practices his Olivia impression, also seen in the previous two segments. But his face shifts, suggesting that the reality of the performance is dawning on him in the same way that it seemed to strike Gary in the first segment.
Because Meryl is mean as hell about this in a way that is so brutal.
Oh, yeah.
Because
up to this point, he's like one of two people in town who like have got Gary's back.
Yeah. And he is one of two people that is going to turn on Gary in a way that's, again, we've made a lot of the way that Trent Harris is focused on the homophobia. You get the sense that he understands what it means to be ostracized in that way.
Yeah.
Because there's a cruelty to all of this, but it is a cruelty that comes from like you're a lost cause. I can't even be associated with you. Because Meryl walks out of the room and he's just like, I'm not doing this. I can't be associated with you in this way.
Yeah.
And it is heartbreaking to watch this happen.
Yeah, it's fucking sucks, man. Because like that this has happened to a lot of people who've come out to their very best friends, their closest family.
You can ask any queer person; they have a story like this. I have stories like this. It is brutal to watch people do this and to be on the receiving end of this. And you understand it in a way like Trent Harris gets that in a weird way. That's like, in a way, it's like when you read a white person who writes about racist interactions in a way that James Baldwin would have. And it's like, how do you seem to sort of instinctively understand this in a way that you realistically shouldn't.
Right.
And he does. And I think that's why he seems to get with that Jesus Christ, you know what I'm getting at.
Ostracization.
Thank you. He seems to understand what that's like.
Yeah.
And again, that's the thing that drew him to this story to begin with. It's odd that that's the part he keys in on, but it feels very natural.
But also, it is played up for hardcore effect in this one.
Right. It's sort of like, well, I'm not sure Gary's gay, but I'm starting to wonder about you, Trent Harris.
Yeah. So, when it's time to go on, Larry throws some dry ice and water for some stage fog.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Shuffles
I would like to bring a bucket of water and dry ice would be everywhere. Like, I had a reservation for 2. Splash.
I'm with you on that. I definitely want a little bit of atmosphere when I'm in a place, and like dry ice will do in a pinch.
Look, if we have to live through Trump version 2.0, I should be able to enter a room with some flourish.
Yeah. So, awkwardly shuffles out on the stage in front of presumably the entire town. Because this is the thing. In this version, we see the crowd, and like the auditorium is packed this time. You know, where in the original, like the audience was just the people who were also performing. You know,
which again is a way of Trent Harris making this seem so much worse than it really was.
Or also much bigger in his own mind than it actually was.
Well, because it makes the wrong that he thinks he did that much greater.
Yeah. So once again, he performs "Please Don't Keep Me Waiting" in a breathy high register. Now,
I think what's odd about this is that Crispin Glover can actually sing. Yeah. Like, he has records. Like, I mean, I don't think he's a great singer. But he's not that bad.
No.
And the fact that he decides to go like full on Gary in this one,
well, if for nothing else, that dude commits to a part.
He sure does.
Yeah.
I mean, he almost kicked David Letterman in the face.
Yeah, Terrence takes the camera on stage, gets real close to Larry, who hams it up at maximum power.
Which, it should be said, Trent Harris gets really close to Gary in the original one. Like, he is right in his face.
He does, yeah. So
in a way where it also feels like Gary is performing for Trent Harris.
Well, in a way, he is. The entire fucking point of this talent show was to get on TV.
Yeah.
Not just TV, on his favorite TV channel.
Yeah, because he loves hamming it up.
Yep. I love hamming it up. Also, I've been with two since way back.
Yeah. Well, since when? Since it started?
I know. Terrence takes a camera
since
on stage.
Fucking Philo T. Barnes? What's his name?
Philo T. Farnsworth. So yeah, the song ends to scattered applause, and when the curtain is closed, Larry talks.
To like scattered but confused applause.
Yeah.
And again, in the first one, people clap politely. All 5 of them clap politely, and like nobody's throwing tomatoes at him.
Yeah. So now Larry talks to the talent backstage. They're all visibly unimpressed. Larry, however, is unmoved by the tension until the guy who helped him bring in some talent at the diner tells him to take the wig off, that he's embarrassed to the entire town. And it is enough to break his confidence. Even Merrill walks out on him. This is the scene where Merrill like fully walks out on him. Because Merrill's role in this one was he was supposed to be like the guy in the old man mask in the first one.
And the guy who tells him to take the wig off is the guy who defends him
who
in
backed
the
him up in the diner, yeah. So it really cuts in this one. So now we cut to the early morning. Terrence answers the phone, and it's Larry, who begs him not to run the footage. He's more than happy to pay for his time and expenses if he doesn't run the talent show footage of You in 2 is what it was called. This segment's version of Extra, so Terrence reassures him that it's all good. People are going to love it. He's really sleazy like that. So now, in the dim morning light, Larry puts the costume away, takes out a rifle, loading a cartridge, and then places the barrel in his mouth. He struggles with the rifle and hesitates, eventually giving up on suicide, looking instead to the Xanadu poster. Now, the next day, he puts the wig on in his car, goes into the diner. Patrons are stunned as he orders a coffee, does his Olivia speaking impression before stomping out the door, seeming to decide that his Olivia act is more of a them problem than a him problem, slams the Olivia Newton John 8-track into a deck, and drives off, singing as he drives. Cut to black, roll credits for the last time.
Wow.
Yep.
There you have it. That is the Beaver Trilogy that I forced you to watch 4 times.
3 variations on a theme.
It is very clear that Trent Harris felt a tremendous amount of guilt. And that is why he keeps trying to make these movies as though he's trying to validate that feeling of guilt or justify however he's beat himself up. So what he says, again, the reason I found that Starley Kine interview really interesting is that she doesn't badger him, but she does have to push a little bit because he does keep giving her sort of the stock answers. She's like, well, I don't know. And she's just like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You don't know. Like, it's clear, like, Starley Kine is not like, she's not someone from Entertainment Weekly. Like, if you've ever seen her,
get the real fucking story.
If you've ever seen her, like,
it's in there.
Yeah, she's not your standard interviewer. Do you ever listen to the episode of This American Life where the breakup song one?
No.
Where she gets Phil Collins to help her. You can cut this whole thing if you want it. It's not relevant to the episode, but like she gets Phil Collins to help her write a breakup song because she broke up. So she breaks up with her boyfriend after like 8 or 9 months or something. And she's like, well, all the great breakup songs every time that people break up. And so it's like one of the ones that's a full episode, I think.
Okay.
And she eventually she tracks down Phil Collins and she convinces him to help her write the song. And he talks a lot about like his divorce and like he talks about writing In the Air Tonight and like how that was just sort of an outpouring of his anger and frustration and sadness. And they end up writing this song together. But by the end of the episode, she starts crying. And then I start crying because she realizes like that she had been going through this whole, and he's sort of explaining like, it's really just a process for you to try to like understand what's happened to you and how you feel. And she's been so guarded about it the whole time.
I think this is relevant to the fucking episode
and
that
so
we're talking about here.
She's kind of just like, well, this will be like a laugh. I'll do the thing and we'll do it with with Phil Collins. It'll be great for the thing. And by the end, she realizes that like she was so much more affected by this breakup, and she's sort of crying with Phil Collins on the thing. And it is such a moving thing to just be like, yeah, you didn't want it to be like this, but it really is, and you needed to do this. It's a really beautiful thing. I think she's an incredibly talented journalist, and she does a really great job in this interview with him, where she really kind of pushes him to the point where, he's just sort of
he
like,
tells her
you're
to
just
shut up at one point.
Yeah, he's like, you're just trying to get me to like say this thing like and this is how he comes across in every fucking interview. And she's just like, come on, man, like level with me here. And he does say, look, yeah, I felt really, really bad because I felt like I put myself and my career above whatever this person needed. And it's like, yeah, but you only felt that after you knew that this happened. You didn't go into this to exploit anybody. It was like everybody told him he was supposed to feel this way about this. And then when he learned this, he was like, oh my God, I think I did something really, really bad that I can never take back. And he could never get any more perspective because the one person who he needed to hear from, he couldn't find.
Yeah.
And probably didn't want to hear from. Like, I mean, he could have realistically found him if he wanted to. It's not that fucking hard. I'm sure Gary didn't go that far from Beaver.
In Beaver Trilogy Part 4, which is the documentary that was on Netflix, the director, Matt Bessler, I think is his name, he finds him. And all he does to find him is he goes to the high school and he looks him up in the yearbook and like finds other people in the yearbook who are also still in town and just kind of asks around until he comes to.
That's how you do research, everybody.
And then
that's also how you stalk people proper.
Yeah, and then he finds out his sister. So yeah, this is kind of a neat way to sort of to end this, because what ends up happening is,
well, before you do that, because the other thing that he's trying to do with these movies, he's trying to give Gary a happy ending. He desperately needs it to be.
Put a pin
different.
in that, because this will be a nice little crescendo. So what ends up happening is Bessler goes to Beaver and he tracks down Gary's family and he interviews all of them. And then,
this all happens way after.
So this happens. So this movie comes out in 2001, and this documentary is, I think, released in 2011 or 2012. And so Bessler goes and he talks to basically Gary's entire family. Because
Gary died in 2009.
Gary died of a heart attack at the age of 50, so he can't talk to him. And so his sisters kind of fill in all of these blanks that Trent Harris was kind of looking for. He probably could have just spoken to them and gotten this, but what they end up.
But he also probably didn't want to do that because probably would have confirmed, or he feared it would confirm the thing that he feared the most, is that he really was a monster for doing this. But the crazy thing is, and this will be relevant when I get to my wrap up, that the crazy thing is that by not doing it, he still allowed himself to be a bigger monster.
Right. He made himself like the terror of the bad guy in this story that he never really needed to.
Right.
But what the story that Gary's sisters eventually, I keep calling him Gary, his name is Richard Griffiths. What his sisters ends up telling Matt Bessler is this moment. This was also like in the same way that this really fucked with Trent Harris. This kind of ruined Gary's life in a way that, in the same way that Harris was kind of haunted by this singular moment also haunted Gary, even though it never went out on TV. And his mood, his entire life changed, his attitude changed and shit in a way that he carried this weight with him that this moment kind of crushed his dreams and made him realize that he was probably just going to work for Union Pacific Railroad for the rest of his life, and he'd never, be an entertainer or nothing.
And to be fair, he kind of did.
He kind of did, but
that's not a terrible life either.
No, but also not a dead end, because what ends up happening, and I'm gonna let you take this over because there's a happy ending here.
Yes. So the movie eventually, what happens is that Trent Harris gets a call in 98, 99 from a guy in somewhere in Northern California. I think it's like an arts, like a community arts center. And he had heard an interview with Harris talking about these movies. And he was like, that sounds really interesting. And so he calls him up and says, would you be willing to come and show this at our art center? And he says, sure, why not? And so he goes and he shows it. And from there, it sort of slowly picks up steam. It ends up at, and it is what we just talked about. It is just these 3 movies cut together back to back. And it ends up going to the New York the New York Video Film Festival? Yep. Some big fucking festival. I can't remember what it's called. And it gets tons of acclaim. It makes its way to Sundance in 2002, I believe, or 2001.
2001.
And so it goes to Sundance and he's like, well, fuck it. Like, this guy is a huge part of this story. I want to bring Richard Griffiths with me to this premiere. And so he gets tickets for him and he's like, I think he gives them to a friend or an assistant or whatever. He's like, please try and find him. I really want him to come to this. The day comes, he still hasn't shown up. And he's like, well, all right, I tried. And so he goes, the film is a huge hit. Everybody, like, standing ovation, people are blown away. And they're doing like a Q&A after. And a guy stands up in the audience and he's like, hey, I bet you don't remember me. Turns out to be Groovin' Gary himself, Richard Griffiths. And he's like, holy fucking shit. And he like kind of like, he's like, they like gets off stage, like takes him outside. And he's like, I have been trying to find you forever, which is a bit of a lie. It's actually, he has not been trying to find him forever, but he did want him to go. And they sort of catch up a little bit. And Trent Harris learns that he's not the villain of the story, and that he never really was, and that, you know, he sort of catches him up on what's been happening, and it's kind of a little bit like you remember when Betty Page got really big,
yeah,
and like they
and then she kind of like finds out,
and Betty Page, she was just like, I'm sorry, I'm a what now?
Yeah,
I'm an icon. She's like, I live in a fucking shack in the woods. You're not an icon. But it's a little bit like that. He's just like, what are you talking about? Like, we made the thing and life went on. And so they go to a party and it's like the big, the rap party, the big Sundance rap party. And, all the fucking stars there. It's Sundance and, probably Quentin Tarantino's got some schlock he's pitching. Like, it just stars upon stars upon stars. Stars upon stars, you might say. And everybody wants to talk to Richard Griffiths because this movie was so big and he was so magnetic. And he, for that evening, becomes the fucking star of the Sundance Film Festival. And it allows Trent Harris to sort of close the book on this because he learns that he's not a monster. He didn't do anything.
Yeah, it's a big cathartic moment for both of them.
Yeah.
That sort of relieves them of this weight because according to Griffith's sisters, following this event, like his life changed up to the point that he died. Like he was like invigorated. He got what he wanted in the end. He wanted to be
got his Hollywood ending.
Yeah. And it made him, it sort of like fulfilled him in a way that like nothing else could have. And so up till the day that he died, unfortunately, very, very young, like it had the effect on him that he kind of expected it to originally. Even though it was just this one night at Sundance, it's
recognition. He needed recognition for being special. And this gave him an opportunity to be special. And with that, they're both able to kind of close this chapter of their lives. And that is, I'm going to guess, again, we're speculating, I'm going to guess that is why Trent Harris has never, you could get this into distribution. I don't know that it would be a big hit. It's a weird movie.
It's a very weird movie. It's not for everybody. People like us will recognize it for what it is and probably become equally as like obsessed and fascinated with it.
But I think that's why he doesn't talk about it either. He's just sort of like, I got what I needed. I am done with this.
Yes, if you try to talk to him about it now, he will not. Like, I believe that this event truly closed the book on this for him, and he's just done with it.
So you can still get this. You can get it from his website, which I think is echocave.net.
.net.
And I encourage everybody to get this movie. I think.
And the thing is he personally sends it to you, and he personally sends you the email letting you know that it's on the way.
Yeah, he signed my copy.
Yeah, I told him that we were doing this. And I was send him a link to it. No fucking response. So,
nope. And I get it. Like, and that's why I said this is a movie made by one person for that one person. This was for him. This finally got his closure. And the weird thing is that the critical moment of the movie, if you just watch this movie, you know nothing about it. You would not know that Gary actually did try to kill himself.
Yeah.
And you also would not know that they all get closure in the end, which is a little bit sad because I think, again, I'm a pessimist, but the way this story ends is very satisfying in a way that I think is very moving.
It is a genuinely beautiful ending to the story.
But that's why it's not for anybody else. This was made for Trent Harris. He needed to have closure, and he got it, and that's why he's done with it. And I get that part.
Yeah, totally. I fucking love it. I love this movie to death. I'm so glad that you brought this one into my life because I really feel it. I have one final note before we close the book on this.
Well, you can hit it because I've got one as well.
Okay. Farrah, the car from the beginning of the movie,
that's where you're going. Okay.
Yeah, still in possession of one of Gary's sisters, and it still runs.
Nice. I mean, you got to touch the battery with the screwdriver, but it gets you there. It'll get you there. My final thought on this is, because this is a super compelling, and this is the part I've thought so much about, is why is this so compelling? Because one of the most interesting things about this is that if you had gone into this knowing nothing that we just said, knowing none of this information, you would have no idea what you just watched.
Right.
And yet, you would be captivated by the whole thing. And that, I think the reason this movie resonates with pretty much everybody who sees it is that even if you don't know all the information, you sort of instinctively understand what Trent Harris is doing. He's replaying something in his mind over and over. And the reason it resonates is that this is something that all of us have done or continue to do, is we have things that we regret that we have never had closure on or we've never gotten answers on. And in the absence of that closure and those answers, all we can do is speculate. And for some of us, we speculate the worst of ourselves. We believe that we have done something so egregious and so terrible that we are unforgivable. And I think that's what Trent Harris was doing. And we see that. We can see it when we watch it, and that's what resonates. It's like, I get what you're doing. We all do it in our heads. We just don't have Sean Penn and Crispin Glover, thank God, to do it with us. Like, just because he did it in movies, he's doing the same thing. And that's why we understand this. We get it because we all are doing it all the time. And that's why I think it's a little sad that the ending doesn't actually get tacked on, because I think that's the part we all kind of want. It's like, we need to know that we're not the monster.
Right. The thing that is what ultimately is so compelling to me about this is not what you see. It is what it suggests and leads you to sort of seek out. Like, I went out of my fucking way to learn absolutely everything that I could about this movie, about Trent Harris, about Groove and Gary. And I feel that without the larger picture, it is a movie that really leaves you wanting. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And yet you still understand it in a way that is like, you feel like you've watched something very special and you sort of walk away. You can at least walk away with that. So even if you didn't know all this, it's still something really impressive to see.
Yeah.
So Get out there and buy a copy. Give Trent Harris your money.
Yeah. And if you don't want to go that way, you can watch this on archive.org. It is a humongous fucking hassle, but you can watch it there.
And if you're going to do it on archive.org, just sign up for our Patreon and give us your money.
Truth. So yeah. What do we got next? What are we doing next?
Oh, well, as you have made note of at the top, Bring Me the Axe. We'll be back next week with the old Thanksgiving classic, Daughter of Darkness. Lesbian vampire Thanksgiving.
Yep.
99 Cent Round will be back in 2 weeks because I cannot fucking believe it. It will be December 1st.
Crazy.
And we're kicking off Christmas with the bizarro Canadian kids Christmas movie.
Oh, God.
The Christmas Martian, which I have watched a couple times, and it is a very, very strange
That movie is a fucking doozy, man. All right. So, yeah. What a movie, man. So, be back here in a week as we take on Daughters of Darkness. Be back in 2 as we just freak the fuck out and watch The Christmas Martian.